Chapter 1591. It was raining, and it was raining with spiritual energy. Although Bu Fong's divine sense was suppressed, it still existed. He could clearly sense the spiritual energy in the rain. Would there be spiritual energy on Earth? Did it exist all the time, or did it appear because of his return? Bu Fong was a little confused. He didn't cultivate before, so he didn't know if there was spiritual energy in the rain. The spiritual energy rain didn't last long and soon stopped. The ground was full of water. When Bu Fong stepped on it, the water splashed, and the cold rain went through his toes, making him feel cold. Spiritual energy was only contained in the rain. After the falling rain evaporated, the spiritual energy contained in the rain also rose. It filled the air. In fact, there was no spiritual energy in the air. It was because of the rain that there was spiritual energy. What was strange was the rain. Suddenly, Bu Fong was stunned. He was lost in thought. It seemed that the artifact spirit was really sleeping on Earth. Otherwise, there wouldn't be spiritual energy rain on Earth. Bu Fong was a little helpless because he couldn't find you. His divine sense was suppressed, and the suppression was very strong. Of course, Bu Fong could force his way through the suppression, but he didn't know what would happen if he did. Would he alert the enemy? Or would it cause a drastic change on Earth, destroying it or something? Back in the old house, the air was still filled with the smell of moldy ingredients. Bu Fong frowned and collected all the ingredients, throwing them away like garbage. He didn't like this kind of ingredients at all. There was a knock on the door. Bu Fong opened the door. Outside the door stood Lu Mu, who was looking at Bu Fong in horror, as if he had seen a ghost. He didn't dare to offend Bu Fong at all. He crushed his phone and patted it, almost breaking his fingers. There was something wrong with this guy. "The head chef wants you to go over," Lu Mu said. After that, he hurriedly ran away. He hadn't figured out how to face Bu Fong, so he didn't want to see Bu Fong now. Head chef? Patting Xiaopi on his back, Bu Fong stepped out of the room. He walked downstairs to the restaurant across the street. Yu Manor was the name of this restaurant. The decorations were magnificent and magnificent. However, business was quite bleak. This had nothing to do with the chef's skills. The dishes in this restaurant actually tasted pretty good. Bu Fong was a chef's apprentice here, so he had tasted the chef's cooking before. However, the restaurant just wasn't popular. Back then, Bu Fong couldn't understand why. Lu Mu cowered to the side in fear. Bu Fong stepped into the restaurant and glanced at him. Lu Mu cowered, not daring to look Bu Fong in the eye. Bu Fong pursed his lips, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked toward the kitchen. Needless to say, the head chef should be in the kitchen. Chi chi chi. As soon as he entered the kitchen, there was the sound of pots being tossed. That was the sound of pots colliding with the stove, and the fire was raging. Bu Fong raised his head and looked over. There, a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s was holding a ladle in one hand and the edge of the iron pot with a rag in the other. He was tossing the wok skillfully. Of course, in Bu Fong's eyes, the middle-aged man's wok-tossing technique was full of mistakes. At the edge of the stove, there were a lot of seasonings, sugar, salt, MSG, soy sauce, garlic paste, chili. To Bu Fong, all of this was familiar and strange at the same time. It seemed that Bu Fong hadn't done this kind of simple cooking for a long time. Chi. The wok tossing ended. A spoonful of water sizzled. Then, he covered the wok and stewed it. At this time, the head chef finally had time to look at Bu Fong. "You're here." The head chef looked at Bu Fong and smiled gently. Bu Fong nodded expressionlessly. His face had become much gentler. This head chef had taught him everything and had high hopes for Bu Fong. So, Bu Fong was much gentler to him. "Bu Fong, you've been slacking these days. Being a chef is a profession that you can't slack off. Once you slack off, your sensitivity to food will weaken, and it will be difficult for you to cook satisfactory dishes," the head chef said. He wiped his hands with a rag, leaned against the stove, and looked at Bu Fong. Bu Fong nodded. Of course, he knew what the other party meant by slacking off. However, it was not his fault. After all, he had transmigrated. "Our Yu family's business is not very good. We might not be able to continue. Alas, what a pity. I was ambitious to come to Yu family to make a name for myself. But in the end, I ended up like this. All right, let's stop talking. Go and cut the ingredients. We'll have dinner later." The head chef sighed. He turned around, uncovered the wok, and continued to cook. Bu Fong was stunned, but he did not refuse. He walked to another stove. He picked up a few potatoes on the stove and tossed them in the air. They were familiar ingredients. Cutting potatoes was a very troublesome thing because he had to peel them first before he could shred them. But Bu Fong did not care. He suddenly had an urge to cook a dish. He wondered if he still had that kind of control over his cooking skills after he came back. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the knife rack. With a shake of his hand, he twirled the knife in his hand. The knife light flashed. The potatoes were washed and cleaned. Then he tossed them up gently. The potatoes floated in the air. When they were about to fall, Bu Fong's eyes suddenly became sharp. In his eyes, the falling speed of the potatoes became very slow. Buzz, the kitchen knife, slashed out fiercely. As if he had carved a circle, the knife light splashed everywhere. Then he held the kitchen knife horizontally with the blade facing up. The potato immediately fell and landed on the surface of the knife. It was still spinning in the air. On the other side, there was a whole potato skin of the same width. Lumu happened to come in. When he saw this scene, his mouth dropped open, his face dumbfounded. This kind of operation was so dazzling that it almost blinded his eyes. Who could peel a potato like this? You. Lumu stretched out his fingers, stammering, unable to say a word. Bu Fong glanced at him, the corners of his mouth twitching. Clatter, 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 clatter. There was a fast-paced collision. It was the collision of the kitchen knife and the chopping board, which was very pleasant to the ear. The entire oval-shaped potato was cut into thin shreds, and every shred of potato had the same thickness. This sound made the head chef turn around, and he happened to see Bu Fong's knife skill. That moment was a little breathtaking. Of course, it was just breathtaking. If he had seen the scene when Bu Fong tossed the potatoes and peeled them, he would have been as shocked as Lu Mu. After cutting the potatoes, Bu Fong did not continue. The next dish was stir-fried potato shreds. Continue, the head chef said all of a sudden. He didn't know why, but when Bu Fong used his knife skill, he had a kind of charm that made him admire him. Did this kid suddenly become enlightened? Okay, Bu Fong nodded, his face expressionless. He lit the fire and heated the wok. The sound of the burning gas arose. Bu Fong's movements were simple and elegant. The main thing was that this dish was so simple that it didn't have any difficulty. He swung the kitchen knife across the chopping board, and the sliced potatoes fell into the wok. Instantly, thick white smoke rose. Holding the ladle, Bu Fong began to shake the wok. That set of movements was so coordinated, as if they were connected in a line. The fire was burning, but Bu Fong's face was expressionless. Without looking, Bu Fong grabbed the ladle, scooping the seasoning on the stove. Bu Fong didn't need to look at how much he should scoop and how much was appropriate. He sprinkled it into the wok, shaking it. Lu Mu swallowed his saliva. This kid, is he messing around? Is he trying to be cool? He didn't even look at the amount of seasoning, and just sprinkled it into the wok. Lu Mu didn't believe that Bu Fong's cooking skill could be so good all of a sudden. It was obvious that they were on the same level before. They had agreed to become dogs together. Why did he quietly show off? Shut up. Watch carefully. The head chef scolded Lu Mu excitedly. He turned his head, staring at Bu Fong's cooking. There was no mistake. It was so perfect that he couldn't believe it. The calmness in his eyes showed his confidence in his cooking skill. Bu Fong believed that the amount of seasoning and the control of the heat, only a world-class chef could have such confidence. Textbook cooking. Sizzle. The wok shook. The shredded potatoes in the wok fell into the ladle. With a swish, they were poured into the bowl. The soup poured down. There seemed to be a flash of light. Lu Mu almost thought he was blind. The dish could shine. It was really shining just now. Hot and sour potato shredded done. Bu Fong put down the utensils, frowned, and wiped the water stains on his hands. Without the god of cooking set, he felt a little uncomfortable. The head chef's lips were trembling. He looked at Bu Fong in disbelief. When the dish was formed, there seemed to be light flowing around it. Although it was just a simple dish of sour and spicy shredded potatoes, the fragrance in the air was just right, and the sour and spicy taste was just right. This dish looked ordinary, but it wasn't simple at all. The head chef swallowed and grabbed the ladle. He scooped up a spoonful of light, golden-hot, and sour potato shredded. Looking carefully, he could see that each potato shredded had the same thickness. This was the perfect knife skill. Moreover, the taste and heat control of each potato shredded were exactly the same. Ah? A spoonful of potato shredded entered his mouth. The head chef's eyes narrowed. Oh. The head chef narrowed his eyes, his face blushing. His clothes fluttered. He felt like he was riding a horse, galloping on the prairie. Galloping on the horse, elegant and unrestrained. The wind was blowing, the horse was neighing, and the potatoes were rolling under his feet. The sour and spicy taste, the soft and tender potatoes combined together. It was like a delicacy in the world, making people drown in it. The head chef grabbed the ladle, his feet clasped together. His body was shaking, as if he was shivering. He had never eaten such delicious food. Was this really a delicacy that humans could cook? Wasn't this the masterpiece of God? The head chef's eyes were red, and he seemed to be about to cry. Lu Mu was dumbfounded. Looking at the head chef's reaction, he felt as if he was possessed by a ghost. Damn it, it's just a hot and sour potato shredded. Why are you so moved? Lu Mu screamed in his heart. The aroma lingering in the air made him somewhat incredulous. He didn't believe that Bufang, who used to be at the same level as him, could make such a dish. He grabbed a porcelain spoon and scooped up a spoonful of potato shredded. Shoving it into his mouth, he chewed, not caring about how hot it was. Chewing, Lu Mu's movement stopped. His body froze, and his eyes were slightly absent-minded. He felt as if his soul had floated away. This dish reminded him of the dishes his elderly grandmother had cooked for him when he was a child. That smell, that feeling, made his nose tingle involuntarily. He couldn't help but shed tears. How could there be such a delicious hot and sour potato shredded in this world? Rumble. Looking at the reaction of the head chef and Lu Mu, Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, a rumbling sound rang out. Bufang furrowed his brows and looked out the window. He looked out the window. There, thunderclouds were gathering, and terrifying rumbles were condensing within. In those thunderclouds, mighty spiritual energy was surging, as if an invisible force had locked onto him. Bufang's eyes narrowed. Lightning punishment? There's lightning punishment when cooking on Earth. Bufang looked straight at the sky, as if he wanted to see through the thunderclouds. However, soon, the thunderclouds dispersed. It was as if they had gathered and appeared to give Bufang a warning. Bufang narrowed his eyes. Was it going to stop him from cooking? Chapter 1592. While Bufang was paying attention to Lei Yin, the plate of spicy and sour shredded potatoes had been emptied. The head chef and Lu Mu were eating one spoon at a time. They were enjoying it. While eating, they were still immersed in the delicious sour and spicy shredded potatoes. They had never thought that an ordinary dish could actually be so delicious. This dish, which they had eaten countless times, could actually tug at their heartstrings like this. Could it be that the sour and spicy shredded potatoes they had eaten before were fake? When the last shredded potato was pinched by Lu Mu's fingers and thrown into his mouth, the plate of shredded potatoes was completely finished. Delicious. It's so delicious. Lu Mu smacked his lips and looked at Bufang with amazement in his eyes. Is this Bufang whose cooking skills are almost the same as mine? Could it be that this kid has been hiding in the small rented house for several days to improve his cooking skills? But this improvement is too fast, isn't it? Cooking is a slow work that produces fine work. Which world-class chef hasn't spent decades immersing in a craft? But how old is Bufang? The head chef wiped his mouth with a cloth towel. His eyes were a little complicated. He was still teaching Bufang and telling Bufang not to slack off in his cooking training. In the end, Bufang's cooking skills made him, the head chef, feel a little ashamed. Is this really Bufang? He had always been optimistic about Bufang because he thought that Bufang had a more passionate heart for cooking than Lu Mu. But he didn't expect that this passion could be transformed into cooking so fast. You've been enlightened, haven't you? Or have you got some secret books? The head chef joked with a smile. The way he looked at Bu Fong now was no longer the way he looked at a junior. Just this sour and spicy shredded potatoes was enough for Bu Fong to finish his apprenticeship. From today on, you can be independent, Bu Fong nodded. He didn't think much of it. His culinary skills had long surpassed the head chef's imagination. Whether it was his understanding of culinary skills or his focus, they were far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. What Bu Fong cared about now was who was restricting him. He had only made some shredded potatoes, but it had already triggered a warning from the Thunder Tribulation. Could it be? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. After bidding farewell to the head chef, he left the kitchen. He came to the roof of the dilapidated building. Standing on the roof, the wind blew gently. He raised his head and looked at the boundless sky. The sky was clear and blue. The thunderclouds had appeared quickly and disappeared just as quickly. Below them was a busy street with high-rise buildings rising from the ground. The atmosphere of modernity was overwhelming. Bu Fong was slightly dazed. However, he quickly calmed his heart. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes. Bu Fong slightly bent his legs. Then, a terrifying power seemed to erupt from his legs. Bang! Straightening his legs, Bu Fong's body shot up into the sky like a rocket. With a sonic boom, he soared into the sky. The wind blew Bu Fong's hair, but Bu Fong didn't care. He wanted to see what it was that was restricting him like this, the Great Path, or some mysterious person. Bu Fong's movement wasn't small. At least, the old houses seemed to shake, making the people in the houses think it was an earthquake. Many people ran out, and some even cursed. Soon, Bu Fong rushed into the clouds. Air currents kept gushing out. A heavy pressure fell on Bu Fong's shoulder. Bu Fong almost couldn't help but break the restraint. However, Bu Fong could feel that once he broke the restraint, Earth would be destroyed in a flash. This strange feeling made Bu Fong hesitate, but in the end, he chose to give up. Bang! After rushing out of the atmosphere, Bu Fong's clothes were already tattered. Standing in the starry sky, Bu Fong glanced around. His eyes were like a dragon, staring straight at the universe. The distant stars and the vast universe seemed to be trying to find that mysterious power. Unfortunately, everything was very peaceful. He furrowed his brows. Bu Fong didn't find anything strange. The pressure on his body made him fall back to earth. With a swooshing sound, he fell like a falling meteor. It was extremely fast. The satellites hovering around Earth captured this scene, which immediately caused many people to panic. What was that? A meteor? But why was a meteor in human form? Bang! Bu Fong fell to the ground, and his body seemed to still be steaming hot. Bu Fong's control of his strength was very balanced. Falling from a height of 10,000 meters, he didn't cause the ground to explode. No matter what secrets Earth had, Bu Fong felt that his main task now was to find the artifact spirits and let them return to the god of cooking Set. Perhaps only in this way could he embark on the perfect path of becoming the god of cooking. Swoosh! Another rain of spiritual energy began to fall from the sky. The cold rain patted on Bu Fong's body, making Bu Fong feel a little sober. There was definitely something strange about this spiritual energy rain, but Bu Fong didn't know where exactly it was. He returned to the rented house and changed into a new set of clothes. Bu Fong went to the restaurant. It was a restaurant, but the business was as bleak as ever. It didn't match the chef's cooking skills. The chef sat in a chair, making tea and reading a book. Lumu was playing with his phone. They had long been used to this kind of life without customers. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before the restaurant closed down. "You're back." The chef smiled when he saw Bu Fong. "Since you're back, let's eat. I was going to ask you to cook." Lumu also put away his phone. His stomach was already rumbling with hunger. However, just as they were about to eat, footsteps suddenly rang out from outside the door. Bu Fong picked up some food with his chopsticks without batting an eyelid. At the chef's signal, Lu Mu ran over excitedly to serve the customer. "What would you like to eat? Just order whatever you want from the 8 major cuisines. The chefs in our restaurant can cook any cuisine," Lu Mu said with a smile, his face brimming with youthfulness. The customer sat down on a chair. He was wet all over, and when the spiritual energy rain rose, there was still spiritual energy escaping. It was a rather strange feeling. Lu Mu stopped laughing. His face darkened as he thought of the rumors about supernatural beings and ghosts that had been spreading around recently. You can cook any dish. The customer lowered his head and chuckled softly. His laughter was a little cold. Suddenly, the customer moved. He reached out, unzipped his jacket, and pulled out a lively carp that was still spitting bubbles. Make this fish into a dish. We don't accept people who bring their own ingredients here, Lu Mu said with an ugly expression. I told you to do it, so you do it. So much nonsense. If you don't do it well, you'll all be buried with this fish. The customer said with his head lowered. As he spoke, his clothes were still dripping with rainwater, which splashed and made one's hair stand on end. Lu Mu's mind went blank. What did this man say? If you don't cook well, you'll be buried with him, or buried with the fish. This man must be joking. Go, the man bellowed. It was as if it could shock the soul. Lu Mu's body trembled. With a splash, the fat carp flew into his arms. The fat carp immediately flew into his arms. The slippery and cold feeling made Lu Mu's face turn pale with fright. He didn't know whether to leave or stay. I'll cook this fish. The chef put down his bowl and chopsticks, frowning as he stood up. It was rare to have a customer who brought his own ingredients. Alas, this restaurant really can't stay open anymore. The chef walked to Lu Mu, reaching out his hand to grab the fish. Oh, this fish is quite fat. What do you want to make? Fish head tofu soup? The chef smiled, pinching the carp. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He had never seen such a fat fish before. It had been out of water for so long, but it could still jump like this. Up to you. If you do well, you'll be rewarded. If you don't, you'll be buried with it. The man still kept his head down. Bufong picked up a piece of meat and put it in his mouth, giving the customer a sideways glance. He seemed to feel something. That customer also slowly raised his head. His wet hair was tangled, and water droplets dripped down his face. It was a pale, bloodless face, with a pair of eyes that seemed to emit a ghostly green light. Bufong was surprised. He glanced at the man, then at the fat fish in the chef's hand. At this moment, the chef had brought the fish into the kitchen. He was very confident in his cooking skills. Looking at the fat fish, he even felt a little itchy. Seeing the chef enter the kitchen, Lu Mu was a little scared, shrinking to Bufong's side. He found that staying by Bufong's side gave him an inexplicable sense of security. He took out his phone, logged into the internet, and began to search for information. While he was searching, Bufong stood up, turning around, and stepping into the kitchen. That fish just now was a little strange. Strange incident in Jiangdong City, looming restaurant on Peace Road. The chefs, including the chef and apprentices, all died tragically. Tianxin Street, Bayou Restaurant, the owner ran away, and the chef died tragically. Strange incidents happened frequently, and the chef suffered. Many fish scales were found in the restaurant where the chef died tragically. Lu Mu's face turned pale. His eyes stared at the information on his phone, his heart pounding. Of course, he knew Looming Restaurant. It was a very popular restaurant on Peace Road, and so was Bayou Restaurant. Although its business wasn't good, it wasn't bad either. However, the chefs of this restaurant all died tragically. And many fish scales were found in the restaurant. Fish scales? Lu Mu's lips were trembling. He suddenly felt that his hands were inexplicably slippery and disgusting, so he wiped them on his clothes. He looked up, looking for Bufong. He wanted to tell Bufong the news. Right now, only Bufong, whose expression didn't change, was the harbor of his soul. However, when he looked up, he found that Bufong wasn't there. The restaurant was extremely quiet. Only the sound of his breathing and the patter of the raindrops on the clothes of the customer behind him could be heard. F***CK. Why did you leave me here to grieve alone? Lu Mu felt suffocated and wanted to cry. He grabbed his phone, ready to stand up and sprint to the kitchen at the speed of a 100-meter sprint. However, before he could get up, a pale hand patted his shoulder. Lu Mu, be quiet. You're very noisy. A hoarse voice rang out. Lu Mu's whole body trembled like a sieve. He suddenly turned his head and looked to his side. There, he had a pale face and a pair of eyes that emitted an oily green glow. The twisted hair was dripping with water. At this moment, the green eyes were staring at Lu Mu. They were less than an inch away. In the kitchen, the chef grabbed the fish and put it into the basket. He was naturally good at cooking fish. Of course, he was originally going to make fish head tofu soup. However, after thinking about it, the fish meat would be wasted if he made fish head tofu soup. He was afraid that the customers would think that he was cheating on the fish, so he changed the dish. He was going to cook live fish. He was much better at this. Instead of processing the fish first, he prepared other ingredients. He took out the ingredients from the large refrigerator. Cucumber, bean sprouts, black fungus, and other ingredients were arranged, cut, processed, and put into a plate. On the other side, he prepared the bottom of the pot to cook the fish. The most important thing about the fish was the taste of the bottom of the pot. When Bu Fong walked into the kitchen, the chef had already begun to process the fish. Holding the sharp knife in his hand, he grabbed the fat fish from the basket and prepared to scrape the scales. Bu Fong stood at the door of the kitchen, watching calmly. The chef's movements were methodical. After the fish scales were scraped off, the fish scales flew and splashed on the ground, making a slight sound. He removed the scales, removed the bones, sliced the fish, and put it into the oil pan. The chef's series of operations were methodical. Gurgle, gurgle. A spoonful of oil was poured into the stainless steel basin. The sliced cucumber and black fungus were faintly visible in it. After sprinkling a few chopped green onions, the boiled fish was done. The chef turned around with the basin in his hand. He was slightly stunned when he saw Bu Fong. Bu Fong, why are you here? I'll serve the fish to the customers. You can clean up the kitchen, the chef said with a smile. Then, he walked past Bu Fong and walked out of the kitchen. Bu Fong turned his head and looked at the boiled fish in the stainless steel basin. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Then, Bu Fong walked to the stove. The ground was scattered with fish scales. On the stove, the fish bones were scattered. Bu Fong exhaled. He stretched out his hand and grabbed at the basket. Immediately, from the basket, he grabbed a lively, plump fish. It was the fat carp that the strange customer took out. At this moment, the fat carp was baring its teeth at Bu Fong. Chapter 1593. Bu Fong looked at the carp that was baring its teeth at him. It was like a clown jumping in front of him. There was something strange about this carp. From the moment he entered the door, Bu Fong had sensed the rich spiritual energy in the carp. Because of the excessive spiritual energy, the carp had gained intelligence. Obviously, this was not an ordinary carp. According to the saying on Earth, this carp had become a spirit. Bu Fong pinched the carp, feeling a little puzzled. Since the carp was here, what kind of fish did the chef cook just now? Did the chef bring the wrong fish? That shouldn't be the case. The carp struggled in Bu Fong's hand as if it wanted to break free. However, Bu Fong's hand was like a pincer that held its body tightly. No matter how he tried, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break free. The carp seemed to be a little anxious. The spiritual energy in its body circulated. Then, its body grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. The teeth in its mouth became extremely sharp, and its body was also covered with sharp spikes. From a harmless fat carp, it had turned into a fierce man-eating giant fish. Bu Fong calmly looked at the carp's transformation. Was this the effect of the recovery of spiritual energy? This kind of existence, which could be called a demon, could run amok in the city without fear. Since even fish could mutate, there must be some humans who had mutated. This Earth was different from the Earth in his memory. Looking at the carp that was baring its teeth, Bu Fong glanced at it. The carp slammed its tail on the stove, making a loud, squeaking sound. A moment later, the giant fish pounced on Bu Fong. After the founding of the country, you can't become a spirit. Don't you know that? Bu Fong raised the corner of his mouth. Looking at the carp that was pouncing on him, he said calmly. Then, he raised his hand and flicked his finger. With a bang, it hit the carp's head. The giant carp instantly turned into a small carp in the air like a deflated balloon. It fell on the ground, flapping its tail. This is what a fish should look like, Bu Fong said lightly. Zhang Xian flicked his finger. Instantly, the kitchen knife on the knife rack fell into Bu Fang's hand. The kitchen knife spun. The fish on the chopping board had lost its spiritual energy and had lost its intelligence. It was no different from an ordinary carp. The chef carried the stainless steel basin filled with boiled fish out of the kitchen. The scene in the restaurant stunned him. Lu Mu and the customer sat together, facing each other. Their heads were lowered, and Lu Mu's body was trembling. The head chef was puzzled and wanted to ask, but he was interrupted by the customer. "Are the dishes ready?" The customer said. The chef ignored Lu Mu for the time being and placed the basin in the center of the table. "This is boiled fish made with the carp you provided. Have a taste." The head chef took out a cloth towel, wiped his hands, and said with a smile. He was very satisfied with his food. "If it's not done well, you'll be buried with that fish," the customer said hoarsely. The customer said in a hoarse voice. His voice was like grinding on sand, giving people goosebumps. At this moment, the head chef also felt a little strange. Combined with Lu Mu's reaction, his heart skipped a beat. However, before the chef could finish his sentence, the customer grabbed his chopsticks and stabbed them into the boiled live fish. After a series of messy fishing, oil splashed everywhere. The aroma of the boiled fish filled the air. The head chef's face didn't look good, and it was getting paler, because he found that there was no fish meat in the boiled fish. How could it be? Did he see a ghost? He was the one who slaughtered the fish, and he was the one who scraped the scales and cut the fish meat into pieces. Where did the fish meat go? Why was there no fish in the boiled fish? My fish, where did it go? The customer put down his chopsticks, his voice a little depressed. That terrifying voice made the head chef's body shiver uncontrollably. Everything was so strange that he felt a chill run down his spine. "I clearly don't say any more. Get ready to die with my fish," the customer sneered. He lifted his head, revealing his pale face. His eyes glowed green. The customer's mouth twitched. Then he reached out his hand, pinching the lower hem of his lips, making a small arc. He blew hard, and a sharp whistle rang out. "Now all of you, die with my fish," the customer sneered crazily. He was looking forward to it. Lu Mu and the head chef sat on their chairs in disbelief. What had happened to them? Was this still the world they knew? Tap, tap. Suddenly, a series of clear footsteps rang out. The faces of the head chef and the others changed. The customer was also bewildered. He raised his head, looking at the kitchen. A skinny figure slowly walked out from it. "My fish." The customer was bewildered. Then, his nose twitched, smelling the rich aroma in the air. It was the smell of boiled fish. Bu Fang walked out with the boiled fish, placing the dish in front of the customer. "Here's your fish," Bu Fang said calmly. The customer was dumbfounded. Lu Mu and the head chef were also shaking. They suddenly admired Bu Fang. They admired Bu Fang's bravery. "Look, is this your fish?" Bu Fang said. The customer's eyes shrank. He reached out his chopsticks, stabbing them into the boiled fish. As he picked it up, a piece of white and tender fish floated on it. The customer's face became paler, and his body trembled. My fish!" The customer was bewildered. Then the green light in his eyes shone brightly. "How dare you cook my fish?" he roared. The customer stood up abruptly. The water on his body dripped faster and faster. It was as if he had been fished out of a pool. This scene made the head chef and Lu Mu shrink in a corner, feeling more and more frightened. However, Bu Fang's face was still calm. He had seen all kinds of storms. A threat of this level was nothing to him. Compared with the horror of Soul 13, the customer in front of him was like a Peppa Pig waving its fist. Sure enough, after unleashing his aura, the customer turned and ran. He was about to rush out of the restaurant. "Did I say you could go?" Bu Fang said indifferently, standing where he was with his hands clasped behind his back. As soon as he finished speaking, the customer, who was about to rush out of the restaurant, froze. The next moment, he ran out even more crazily. Bu Fang twitched his mouth. With a thought, the divine sense compressed in his spirit, immediately spread out. Buzz, the moment the customer sensed the divine sense, he knelt on the ground with a thud. Although Bu Fong's divine sense could only cover a radius of 10 meters, it was not a problem for it to suppress this man. Bu Fong slowly walked to the front of the customer and looked down at him from above. You're a chi cultivator, the customer said in horror. He was a little regretful at this moment. How could one not wet his shoes if he always stood by the river? After all, he had encountered a chi cultivator. A chi cultivator? Bu Fong raised his eyebrows. You can say that, Bu Fong said lightly. Then, too lazy to respond, he raised his hand. This man must have obtained some evil beast-taming technique, found a carp with spiritual energy, and raised it into a monster. The carp was originally docile, but under this man's control, it ate human flesh. Then, it became not docile anymore. A beast that ate human flesh could not be kept alive because it would become addicted to the taste of human flesh. Therefore, Bu Fong could conclude that the guy in front of him was not a good person. If he had not returned to Earth, the consequences might have been unimaginable. Spare me, exalted immortal, spare me. The moment Bu Fong raised his hand, the man knelt in front of Bu Fong and kept kowtowing. His face was full of horror. The pressure that Bu Fong gave him was too great. Spare me? Why should I spare you? Bu Fong said expressionlessly. I can exchange information. I know there's a nine-tailed fox nearby. I know the whereabouts of this nine-tailed fox. The man hurriedly kowtowed and revealed the information in order to save his life. We beast tamers have been fighting over this nine-tailed fox. I just want to improve my strength so that I can have a place in the competition. Now that the national agency is also involved, if I don't improve my little carp's ability, I will lose any chance to compete, and I will also lose my chance in the general trend of the future, the man said unwillingly. For beast tamers, the nine-tailed fox was simply a divine beast. If one could tame it, one could stand at the peak of Earth. However, he did not realize that when he finished speaking, the pressure on his body was increasing. Bu Fong's face was as gloomy as water. Nine-tailed fox. Was he talking about Little Hu? Little Hu is now a nine-tailed fox. Was Little Hu in danger? But even if Little Hu's strength was suppressed, he was not someone that a cat or dog in front of him could covet. Could it be that something had happened? Nine-tailed fox? If it's really a nine-tailed fox, this little carp will only be courting death if he goes there, Bu Fong said. No. Exalted immortal, there's something you don't know. That nine-tailed fox is seriously injured for some reason. All the beast tamers and superhumans in Jiangdong are coveting it. Suddenly, he felt his body float up. He was lifted by a supreme force. This made his heart skip a beat. He felt that Bu Fong's strength was unfathomable. Take me there or die, Bu Fong said lightly. After the disaster of the soul demon, Bu Fong's murderous aura had become much stronger. Just a wisp of it was enough to make the beast tamer piss his pants. In the distance, Lu Mu and the head chef looked as if they were watching a myth. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Is that Bu Fong? What happened? Why did the customer run away as if he had seen a devil when he saw Bu Fong? Of course, what subverted their understanding the most was the customer who was floating in midair. His means were like that of an immortal. Bu Fong put down the beast tamer and asked him to lead the way. Bu Fong was very excited to hear from Little Hu, but if anything happened to Little Hu, Bu Fong would never spare anyone. If Little Hu is injured, what about you, who is separated from him? Who on earth could hurt Little Hu? Even if Little Hu's cultivation base was suppressed like me, his fleshly body was not something that anyone on earth could deal with. He thought of the spiritual energy rain. Bu Fong's brows furrowed. Could it be that there are also powerful cultivators on earth? And the arrival of me, Little Hu, and you has attracted the attention of these cultivators? The thunder tribulation that spied on me and warned me was also caused by these cultivators? Bu Fong frowned deeply. No wonder the system said that Earth is not safe. The artifact spirit of this god of cooking set is really not that easy to awaken. Chapter 1594. Bu Fong took the customer away. Lu Mu and the head chef were left behind, horrified. They looked at each other, feeling that it was all a dream. Lu Mu swallowed hard. Are all the rumors on the internet true? An extraordinary person has really appeared. Moreover, it happened right beside him. Lu Mu's eyes lit up. Then, without hesitation, he wrote a post on the forum about what he had seen and heard today and posted it. The customer was a beastmaster. In fact, he could be considered a kind of superhuman who had comprehended the ability to communicate with animals. Of course, his ability was limited because he had comprehended it when he was drowning. So, whenever he controlled a spirit beast, his whole body would be wet, like a water monster crawling out of the water. At that time, he was on the verge of despair, but the emergence of this ability made him feel that God might not want him to die. So he worked hard to survive. However, he hated human beings, so he constantly ordered his little carp to harm them. He was a man with a twisted mind. At this moment, he was walking in front with his head bowed, but his eyes flashed with resentment from time to time. His identity was very sensitive. He was a criminal that the state agency had been chasing. However, once he showed up this time, he would definitely become the target of the state agency. In fact, he didn't want to go near the nine-tailed fox so early. But there was nothing he could do. The fellow behind him was like a high and mighty god staring at him, causing him to feel so pressured that he couldn't breathe. If there was a chance, he really wanted to escape. The two of them took a taxi, left the city, and came to the suburbs. The sky was once again raining spiritual energy. But this time, the spiritual energy rain was very small. The Beastmaster was madly and greedily drenched in the rain. He liked the feeling of being drenched. Because of the spiritual energy contained in the rain, his strength was continuously increasing. The nine-tailed fox is on this mountain, the Beastmaster said. He turned his head and glanced at Bufong, his eyes flashing with resentment. On the mountain? Bufong narrowed his eyes and glanced at the towering mountain. The mountain path was hidden in the shade of the trees, looking a little dark and gloomy. Since you know about Nine-Tailed Fox, do you know the woman beside Nine-Tailed Fox? Bufong thought for a while and asked. The beast tamer was taken aback. Woman? Why would Nine-Tailed Fox have a woman by her side? No. Nine-Tailed Fox fled into the mountains to avoid being surrounded. There were no women by her side at all. Also, let me remind you, once you set foot on this mountain path, you'll enter everyone's target range. China's Special Ability Agency, many beast tamers, and some chi cultivators from hidden families will pay attention to you. At that time, it won't be so easy for you to save the nine-tailed fox. The beast tamer said, Go ahead. Bufong looked at him expressionlessly. The beast tamer had no choice but to step onto the mountain path. As soon as they stepped onto the mountain path, Bufong could feel the spiritual energy gushing out from the ground, becoming increasingly resplendent. It was so bright that he could not help but narrow his eyes. The beast tamer's eyes suddenly lit up. He knew that his chance to escape had come. Taking advantage of the moment when Bufong's eyes were dazzled, the beast tamer madly ran toward the mountain path. Ignoring the branches, he directly rushed into the forest and disappeared. Escape? The corners of Bufong's mouth rose slightly. He patted Xiaopi on his shoulder. Shrimpy's compound eyes rolled around. Then it let out a squeaking sound. With a ripping sound, it shot out, turned into a golden thread, and disappeared in an instant. After a while, a miserable howl came from the dense forest. The howl only lasted for a moment before it stopped abruptly. Swish! The golden light shot back, once again falling on Bufong's shoulder. Xiaopi lay on it, his whole body dazzling with golden light. In the dark, there seemed to be many people sucking in a breath of cold air. Those are the gasps of the people who had been spying on Bufong after he stepped onto the mountain path. Someone's coming. It seems to be a beast tamer. What's that thing? A golden mantis shrimp? Mantis shrimp also has such a strong fighting ability? What level of beast tamer is this? In the dark, many people were muttering. Bufong naturally knew these people. Needless to say, Bufong also knew that these people should be beast tamers or supernatural users. Of course, they were supernatural users without official certification. Bufong did not pay attention to them. With his hands clasped behind his back, he continued to move forward. The mountain path was very rugged, and it was a steep slope. Along the way, only half of the cement road was paved. The rest was either a muddy road or a bluestone road. Bufong did not know little whose specific location, but as long as he kept going up, he would be right. Halfway up the mountain, Bufong was stopped by someone. It was a group of people wearing khaki windbreakers, both men and women. They expressionlessly blocked Bufong's way, not letting Bufong continue to go up. "Sir, it's dangerous up there. Please go back the way you came." A middle-aged man with an unlit cigarette in his mouth stopped Bufong and said to Bufong, asking Bufong to go back. "What happened up there?" Bufong asked expressionlessly. The man in the windbreaker glanced at Bufong and said, "Nothing. There was a mudslide and the road was blocked." He seemed to feel that Bufong was acting strange, and Xiaopi on Bufong's shoulder made him a little suspicious. "Mudslide?" Bufong was stunned. Then he curled his lips. "That should be just an excuse. Isn't it the nine-tailed fox?" "Huh. You know about the nine-tailed fox. Are you a beast tamer?" The middle-aged man was stunned. "Impossible. I know all the beast tamers in Jiangdong, and there's no one like you. Who are you? Are you a beast tamer from another city?" The middle-aged man's eyes became more and more serious. Had the news about the nine-tailed fox spread? If beast tamers from other cities or even other provinces came here, he was afraid that the Jiangdong branch might not be able to handle them. Not to mention that there were many superhumans eyeing them. Bufong shook his head and said nothing. "Let me go up the mountain." "No, sir. Please go back." The man in the windbreaker became serious. He took out his ID and handed it to Bufong. Hoping that Bufong would back off. The man was ready to deal with Bufong. However, to his surprise, Bufong really backed off after seeing his ID. He put his hands behind his back and walked away unhurriedly. "Oh, this ID is quite useful. Chief Luo, the distribution of spiritual energy is getting thicker and thicker. The number of superhumans and beast tamers on Crouching Tiger Mountain has exceeded 100. A young and beautiful girl wearing a pair of headphones and holding a computer said to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man, who was called Chief Luo, looked more and more serious. "Xiao AI, did you see that man? Can you help me check the number of spiritual energy points he has? What level is he at?" Chief Luo said, frowning as he watched Bufong's back. The girl nodded. After locking onto Bufong's position, she began to search for him on the computer. "Huh, Chief Luo, that man doesn't have any spiritual energy points. Maybe he's just an ordinary person." "Ordinary person? He's definitely not an ordinary person," Chief Luo thought to himself. "How's the situation with the nine-tailed fox? Is the beast binding rope working?" Chief Luo asked. "The beast binding rope is a weapon we modeled after the immortal artifacts of ancient myths and legends. It has a great suppressive effect on spirit beasts born after the revival of spiritual energy. Although this nine-tailed fox is an S-class spirit beast, under the suppression of the beast-binding rope, its spiritual energy points have weakened to A-class," Xiao AI said, typing on the keyboard. "Very good. Keep it up. When a nine-tailed fox's spiritual energy points drop to B-class, we'll strike immediately. Capture the nine-tailed fox. We have to be fast." The appearance of the S-class nine-tailed fox has attracted the attention of all parties. Beast tamers outside the city and even foreign superhumans are coveting it. I've asked the headquarters for help, but we have to deal with it quickly ourselves. "We can't give the enemy a chance," Chief Luo said. In the distance, the team members hidden in the darkness nodded in agreement. Suddenly, Chief Luo froze. Because in the distance, the young man who had left had returned once again. Xiao AI detected that this young man had no spiritual energy points. Was he really an ordinary person? But how could an ordinary person know about the nine-tailed fox? Could it be that the netizens who liked to watch the fun had gotten wind of it? "Well, what are you going to do when you catch the nine-tailed fox?" Bufong looked at Chief Luo with a straight face. "Bring her back to the headquarters and imprison her. The nine-tailed fox is very dangerous. For the safety of the people, she must be imprisoned." Chief Luo didn't know why, but he couldn't help telling this to the young man in front of him. "Oh." Fong nodded. Then he clasped his hands behind his back, turned, and left. Xiao Ai thought that Fong might be a psychopath. Suddenly, Fong turned around again and came up to them. Chief Luo and Xiao Ai were speechless. "Sir, please leave at once, or we will temporarily arrest you." Xiao Ai frowned and shouted coldly. Her voice faded away. In the distance, a few men in the same trench coats slowly approached. "Well, I've thought about it carefully. I think the nine-tailed fox might be my little hoof fox who got separated from me. So, I can't let you take her away. That little hoof fox is used to my cooking, and she may not be used to your food," Fong said seriously after thinking for a moment. Xiaopi, who was perched on his shoulder, also raised her head and nodded. Chief Luo, the corner of Xiao Ai's mouth twitched. She looked at Fong as if he was a fool. "You can continue to fool me. If the nine-tailed fox is your pet, why don't you say that you are a god?" "Sir, your unreasonable behavior has gone beyond our tolerance and seriously hindered our work. So, we plan to temporarily arrest you and let you go when the matter is over," Chief Luo said seriously. "Xiao Ai, raise your hand." That gave Xiao Ai pause. Instinctively, she raised her hand. Suddenly, with a click, a pair of ice-cold handcuffs were cuffed on her hands, and the other side of the handcuffs was cuffed to Fong's slender and fair hands. "You're a technician, so you don't have to participate in the capture. I'll let you watch over this guy for the time being," Chief Luo cleared his throat and said. Then, he turned and left, ignoring Xiao Ai's murderous glare. Fong raised his hand and glanced at the handcuffs, which were as thin as paper. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Are they playing house? You'd better behave yourself. Let me tell you, I'm also a professional with a C-class supernatural ability. Don't try anything funny. I'm very powerful." Xiao Ai had no choice but to say to Fong fiercely, glaring at Fong. A moment later, "Oh, Xiaopi is so cute. I didn't know that mantis shrimps could be so cute." Xiao Ai, handcuffed together, sat on the side and played with Xiaopi. As for Fong, he sat where he was, expressionless and motionless. Xiao Ai chattered as she played with Xiaopi. But no matter what she said, Fong did not bat an eyelid. Suddenly, Fong frowned and turned to look at the top of the mountain. A whistling sound rang out. In the dense forest around him, all kinds of sounds could be heard. In the distance, Chief Luo rose to his feet. "They finally can't wait any longer. Everyone, follow me up the mountain." Chief Luo's eyes became sharp. With a rumble, his hair burst into flames, and he seemed to have turned into a man of fire. The surrounding team members also unleashed their supernatural abilities. They followed Chief Luo and rushed toward the top of the mountain. "Xiao Ai, stay where you are. Keep an eye on this mister." Chief Luo's voice drifted over from afar. Xiao Ai, who had excitedly turned on her computer and was about to set off, was dumbfounded. Fong glanced at Xiao Ai and asked, "Hey, do you know a beast tamer who raises small carps?" A beast tamer who raises carps? Let me see." Xiao Ai paused and typed on the computer for a while. "I found him. Are you talking about the B-class beast tamer we're chasing? Zhanghe? Are you going to provide us with information?" Xiao Ai was stunned. A B-class beast tamer was a terrifying existence. Fong looked at Xiao Ai, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly as he said, "Oh, so his name is Zhanghe. That, just now on the way here, I accidentally killed him. Is that considered information?" Xiao Ai. Chapter 1595. Fong was not very worried about Little Hu. Even if Little Hu fell to the mortal world, he was not someone these superhumans could deal with. After all, Little Hu was already a god, and he had been eating the dishes cooked by Fong, the god emperor, every day. The transformation of his fleshly body was far beyond that of ordinary spirit beasts. Even in the starry sky, he was one of the top beasts. Even if he lay on the ground and was bombarded by these superhumans, he would be unscathed. At most, he would lose a few strands of hair. Take Fong, for example. Fong's fleshly body was much stronger than that of the ancient gods and immortals. He might even be able to withstand a nuclear bomb head-on. Xiao Ai was a little speechless. Bufang's casual words left her at a loss. The Beastmaster who raised the carp was a B-class Beastmaster, just like the B-class superhumans. He was a very powerful existence. On Earth, where the spiritual energy was abundant, he was already a very powerful person. However, just now, Bufang said that he would kill the Beastmaster. You must be joking. Xiao Ai gave a hollow laugh. In her eyes, Bufang, who was originally harmless, seemed to have turned into a devil. She looked at the expressionless Bufang, then at the handcuffs on her hands. For a moment, she wished she could strangle Chief Luo. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. Then he reached out his hand. Bufang's palm was very fair and slender, like the fingers of a pianist. Crack! The handcuffs were broken by Bufang as easily as tearing a piece of paper. The hollow smile on Xiao Ai's face froze. You'd better watch yourself. I'm a C-class superhuman. Don't think about doing bad things. Xiao Ai wanted to cry. The corners of her mouth were trembling, and she could not even hold the laptop in her hands. Bufang was too lazy to talk to her. He raised his hand and pointed his finger at Xiao Ai's forehead. But it spread out like a ripple. Xiao Ai immediately sat on the ground, lowered her head, and fainted. With his hands behind his back, Bufang strode up the mountain. In a dense forest on both sides, the sound of shuttling could be heard. Obviously, many people were rushing to the top of the mountain. Bufang narrowed his eyes. He was very calm and unhurried. Looking at the distant mountain road, Bufang was actually in a trance. He didn't know if all this was real or just an illusion. Or was it his own inner demon? If all of this was true, then where was the chaotic universe that Earth belonged to? Earth must be different from the chaotic universe where the Xiai divine dynasty was located. Which chaotic universe does Earth belong to? Bufang furrowed his brows and stopped thinking about it. With his hands behind his back, he continued to ascend. After a while, Bufang reached the top of the mountain. Xiaopi, who had been lying listlessly on Bufang's shoulder, suddenly perked up and kept squeaking. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth and rubbed Xiaopi's head. Have you sensed little who? Call her. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaopi's compound eyes lit up, and his body turned into a beam of golden light, hovering in the air. But there seemed to be invisible sound waves spreading out from his body. Swoosh! Birds and beasts were flying in the dense forest. An uproar swept through the forest. At the top of the mountain, a roar suddenly burst out. Then a white figure instantly appeared and shot out at high speed. Then a white figure appeared in a flash and sped through the trees. It's here, a nine-tailed fox. Good heavens, it's really a nine-tailed fox, a legendary spirit beast. I'm going to tame it. I'm going to be its master. The Beastmasters were paying attention to the nine-tailed fox went crazy. They sped crazily toward Little Who's location. Chief Luo and his subordinates were also energized. They were holding silver guns in their hands. In fact, firearms were the most suitable weapons for Beastmasters to deal with them. Because their bodies were weak, a single bullet could take their lives. What made Beastmasters strong was that they could tame the spirit beasts that had mutated due to the awakening of spiritual energy. Their strength was in instructing spirit beasts to fight. Unlike superhumans had strange abilities that could strengthen their bodies, make them stronger, and make them unafraid of firearms. Chief Luo's existence made the Beastmasters very afraid. An arcanist with firearms was a nightmare for beast tamers. However, it was impossible for them to give up on a nine-tailed fox. Chief Luo held his gun, his head on fire. He stared excitedly at the nine-tailed fox in the distance. 9 foxtails were swaying. Their snow-white fur was extremely beautiful. In the dark night, they were like sparkling white snow, extremely beautiful. So beautiful. This kind of creature is simply unbearable to be desecrated. It's a pity that he was born in the wrong era. Chief Luo sighed. Then, he looked at his men and said with a frown, "Attack." This nine-tailed fox's spiritual energy has been reduced to A-class. We have the best chance of success if we attack now. At Chief Luo's order, The men behind him immediately moved. Several superhumans rushed into the dense forest with silver guns in their hands. Using the trees as cover, they kept approaching Little Who. Buzz and Superhuman walked out from behind a tree, his body turning transparent. Another superhuman turned into a puddle of water and slowly approached Little Who. All kinds of means emerged one after another. Oh, you want to take the nine-tailed fox for yourself? Your State Ability Users Bureau is too greedy. A whistle rang out. The next moment, a whistling sound rang out from the dense forest. A green-eyed ash wolf whizzed out of the forest and rushed toward the nine-tailed fox. The ash wolf's body grew larger as it ran, and its fur was as sharp as steel needles. It slapped the ground with its paws, kicking up a cloud of dust as it shot forward at great speed. Damn it, Chief Luo cursed. He raised his hand and threw a fireball at the ash wolf. With a boom, the fireball exploded and dissipated in the air. Attack! Chief Luo bellowed. The paranormals who had hidden themselves suddenly appeared and pounced on Foxy one after another. However, they were not as fast as the ash wolf. Before they could get close, the ash wolf had already closed in on the nine-tailed fox. Damn it, that's Lu Changhe, an A-class beastmaster. How dare he show up here? Chief Luo's face was very unsightly. He felt that the mission might fail. If Lu Changhe managed to tame the nine-tailed fox, he would most likely grow into an S-class beastmaster. When that happened, the State Supernatural Bureau would be in trouble. In the dark, a figure showed an excited look. He stared at the ash wolf that was pouncing toward the nine-tailed fox. As long as he could tame the nine-tailed fox, his ability would improve again. At that time, there would be another S-class beastmaster in the world. All of a sudden, the man's gaze froze. The ash wolf that was approaching Little Who had its mouth wide open, but it had yet to bite down. The nine-tailed fox raised its paw. With a pop, it was as if it had popped a balloon. It directly smashed the ash wolf into pieces. Chief Luo, Lu Changhe, all the surrounding superhumans. Bang! The ash wolf's huge carcass fell to the ground. Blood flowed everywhere, and the pungent smell of blood spread. The surrounding people were dumbfounded. The superhumans who were about to approach felt a chill run down their spines. Wasn't the strength of a nine-tailed fox suppressed by the beast-binding rope to A-class? Why was it killed with a single slap of its paw when facing an A-class ash wolf? Chief Luo sucked in a breath of cold air. Retreat. Everyone retreat. The nine-tailed fox could now be classified as an extremely dangerous spirit beast. That slap, just now, could not have been unleashed without the power of an S-class. The nine-tailed fox's eyes darted around, and it opened its mouth as if it was yawning. The next moment, it dashed out. Its nine tails wagged. Then it pierced through the air and disappeared. Chief Luo, should we still chase after it? Several of his subordinates looked at Chief Luo with hesitation on their faces. The anger on Chief Luo's head had dissipated. He gritted his teeth and said, "Chase after it. We can't let the nine-tailed fox fall into the hands of others, let alone those foreigners." The next moment, a group of people chased after the nine-tailed fox. The nine-tailed fox was very beautiful. She ran through the forest at a very fast speed. Her nose twitched as if she had smelled something. Following the smell, she sped all the way. Suddenly, there was the sound of an explosion on both sides of the forest. Sparks flew everywhere. Bullets flew toward her and entered her body. Ding, ding, ding. Bullets flew everywhere. Little Who's eyes swept across the forest and stopped abruptly. In the distance in the forest, superhumans wrapped in black explosion-proof suits appeared one after another, holding strange weapons in their hands. The leader of the group whispered to each other in English. The next moment, he waved his hand, signaling for them to attack. Chief Luo's expression changed dramatically when he arrived. It's a foreign superpower organization. Damn it! Why haven't the reinforcements from our headquarters arrived yet? Chief Luo was a little anxious. The nine-tailed fox tilted her head, narrowed her eyes, and looked at the group of superhumans in explosion-proof suits slowly approaching her. A majestic energy began to condense in her mouth. A fragrant aroma slowly diffused in the air. Everyone's expression became strange. What's that smell? Why does it smell so good? It smells a little like beef meatballs. Who would eat beef meatballs in this wilderness? Beef meatballs smell so good? Which restaurant sells it? The people around exchanged glances. They had not realized that the smell of beef meatballs came from the fox's mouth. Just as Little Who was about to spit out the explosive meatball, the clear sound of footsteps rang out. The surrounding ability users were all stunned. They all narrowed their eyes and looked at the figure who had entered the area. It was a thin young man with a buzz cut and an expressionless face. Step by step, he approached the nine-tailed fox. Who's that? Is he a beastmaster? That can't be right. There's no such person among the beastmasters from the River East. I don't know him. Could he be a beastmaster from another province? Or a beastmaster from Sakura? Many people frowned and began to mutter. The arcanists in explosion-proof suits stopped moving. They were determined to get the nine-tailed fox. However, the expressions of Chief Luo and the team members behind him became very strange. Isn't that guy? Didn't the chief handcuff him to Xiao AI? Xiao AI said this man has no spiritual energy, so he should be an ordinary person. How can an ordinary person be so bold? The team members were muttering. Chief Luo's face grew more and more unsightly. He watched as Bufong walked step by step toward the nine-tailed fox. The nine-tailed fox, which was comparable to an S-class spirit beast. Don't come any closer. Run. Chief Luo's face was extremely unsightly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, in the distance, the foreign superhumans in explosion-proof suits sneered and pulled the trigger. Bang! 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 Sparks flew everywhere. One bullet after another shot toward the nine-tailed fox and the young man who was approaching it. If nothing went wrong, the young man would be turned into a sieve in an instant. He was dead. Chief Luo's face was extremely unsightly. The team members behind him and the beastmasters hidden among them were also somewhat angry. How could a foreign superhuman be so arrogant? How could they bring weapons into their country? It was a pity that the young man would die a tragic death. The corners of Bufong's mouth curved upward slightly. Xiaopi, on his shoulder, straightened her upper body and danced. In the distance, when Little Who saw Bufong, her eyes softened. She lowered her head, leaned close to Bufong, and stroked Bufong's face. She stuck out her tongue and licked Bufong's face. She was quite docile. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. One by one, the bullets drew an arc in the air, approaching him at high speed. Just when everyone thought that Bufong was going to die, the bullets that were an inch away from Bufong all froze in the air. Chapter 1596. The bullet froze in the void as if it was fixed by glue. It did not fall. It was a strange scene. At least, everyone present was dumbfounded. First, they were surprised by the friendly attitude of the nine-tailed fox toward the young man. Then, they were even more surprised when the bullet floated in midair. What kind of technique is this to freeze a bullet? Is he an S-class superhuman? And a mind-type superhuman? Chief Luo's mouth twitched. Sure enough, this guy is really a superhuman. I didn't expect him to disguise himself so well. Also, why is the nine-tailed fox so close to that guy? Suddenly, Chief Luo remembered what Bufong had said before. He raised a nine-tailed fox and was used to eating his dishes. Chief Luo was shocked when he thought of that. Could it be this nine-tailed fox was really raised by this guy? When did Hua have such an awesome beastmaster? And he appeared in Jiangdong City? Bufong rubbed Little Who's head and held him in his arms. He held Foxy in his arms. There was a collar around Foxy's neck. It was made of metal, and there was a circle of red dots that were constantly flashing on it. This must be the so-called beast-binding rope. Bufong frowned. He reached out and tore off the rope, then threw it on the ground like a piece of junk. Chief Luo was speechless. That was the beast-binding rope specially researched by the state's Supernatural Bureau. Even an S-class spirit beast could not break free from it. How could it be torn off like a piece of paper? The bullet was still floating in midair. The foreign superhumans were getting restless. Bang, bang, bang. They did not believe it and fired again. Some snipers even aimed at Bufong's head and fired. In Hua, they were looters. Once they had captured the nine-tailed fox, they would retreat immediately. Therefore, they did not show any mercy. Kill whoever deserves to be killed. Buzz, however, when the bullets were an inch away from Bufong's body, they froze again. This scene was a little horrifying. Countless bullets were hovering around him, and the sight of them sent chills down one's spine. Is it fun? The corners of Bufong's mouth curled downwards as he said coldly. Then he raised his hand, bent his finger, and flicked a bullet in the air. The bullets immediately changed their direction. Bang, bang, bang. The bullet bounced back. Its speed was even faster than before, and the whistling sound made one's scalp go numb. However, the foreign paranormals were fearless because they were wearing the latest explosion-proof suits and were immune to bullets. Bang. However, a metahuman wearing an explosion-proof suit collapsed. Two arcanists wearing explosive suits fell to the ground. Like sparrows, the foreign superhumans fell from the trees one by one and crashed to the ground, lifeless. The explosion-proof suits that they were so proud of, as well as the physical bodies of paranormals, did not give them any good resistance. Let's go. Let's go back. Bufong rubbed Little Hu's head and said softly. Then, he started walking down the mountain. He had come here to take Little Hu away. He did not care about anything else. What he cared about now was how to find the sleeping artifact spirit of the god of cooking Set. Bufong had no clue at all, so his temper was not very good. The people around him were very quiet, not daring to breathe too loudly. What kind of existence was this? With just a flick of a finger, so many people from the foreign superhuman organization were killed. There were even A-class superhumans among them. Who was this young man? Could he be a chi cultivator? Chief Luo felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He did not dare to move at all. He wanted to stop Bufong, but when he saw the scattered bodies of the superhumans in the distance, in the end, he gave up. He watched as the young man left with the nine-tailed fox in his arms. Chief Luo, what should we do now? We've failed the mission. One of his subordinates asked Chief Luo with an unsightly face. Chief Luo took a deep breath. Let's go back. That young man's strength was unfathomable, and they were not fools to fight him head-on. The surrounding beastmasters were not fools either. However, their desire for the nine-tailed fox did not diminish, and they all followed behind Bufong. Bufong went down the mountain and walked at a steady pace. Stroking Little Hu's soft fur, Bufong frowned and asked, "Where are Little Hu, do you know?" Little Hu looked up and shook his head, looking a little confused. Bufong was not surprised that Little Hu did not know where you were. It seems that it will be more difficult to find you. After all, Little Hu is a spirit beast, so he's a bigger target. Behind him, there were many faint auras following him, which were very obvious to Bufong's divine sense. Bufong did not like this, so Bufong felt it necessary to give these people some warning. Holding Little Hu in his arms, Bufong stood still. Bufong's sudden stop startled the beastmasters hiding in the dark. They exhaled slightly. Then Bufong looked up, opened his mouth, and said lightly, "Get lost. Get lost. Get lost." His voice was like thunder, and it suddenly exploded. The terrible pressure of divine sense instantly fell. Puff! The beastmasters' faces changed. Each of them spat out blood and lay on the ground. Unable to move, they felt as if their bodies were filled with lead. It was as if they had taken a trip to the gates of hell. It's too horrible. What aura is this? Without any hesitation, the beast tamers began to flee like rats. They did not dare to stay for long, for fear that Bufong would kill them. They had seen with their own eyes how Bufong dealt with those foreign superhumans. They could not believe that there was such a terrifying chi cultivator in Jiangdong. Feeling the aura disappear, their ears became much quieter. Bufong continued to walk unhurriedly toward the rented house. Little Hu and Xiaopi were playing on his shoulders. But as he walked, Bufong sank into his spirit sea. His mind suddenly flickered, and he sank into his spirit sea. He floated there, and the god of cooking sets were floating there. Bufong came to the huge Qilin, who was sleeping soundly. It was the Qilin who had told him the whereabouts of the artifact spirits of the god of cooking sets. It should be the right thing to ask them now. Qilin, if the artifact spirits are sleeping on Earth, where are they? Bufong asked, frowning. His voice echoed, but the Qilin did not show any signs of waking up. Is the recovery of Earth's spiritual energy related to the sleeping artifact spirits? Bufong continued to ask. Suddenly, at this moment, the Qilin opened its eyes and stared at Bufong with its bell-like eyes. Take a guess, the Qilin said. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Aha! Ha! Ha! For the sake of your cuteness, Qilin, I'll tell you some gossip. The artifact spirits are sleeping in every corner of this world, and if you want to find them, you need a key. You have to find the key yourself. I'll tell you another gossip. These keys are related to the recovery of spiritual energy, the Qilin said. Bufong nodded. He didn't seem to want to say more. Before Bufong could ask, he fell back into a deep sleep. The snoring was so loud that the entire spirit sea was shaking. Bufong twitched his mouth and gave the Qilin a disdainful look. With a thought, he withdrew from the spirit sea. Find the key to the recovery of spiritual energy. Bufong pondered for a while. As he walked, he soon returned to the city. The sky was gray. It started raining again. Bean-sized raindrops fell from the sky. With a thud, they hit the ground and splashed. Spiritual energy evaporated from them and rose into the air. The recovery of spiritual energy was related to the key. Bufong narrowed his eyes. Then I should find the source of the recovery of spiritual energy. If I want to know, I have to find a professional. Bufong stood where he was, the rain drenching his clothes. Suddenly, an umbrella appeared above his head. It was an oil paper umbrella. Huh? Bufong was stunned. When he came to his senses, he turned to look at the person next to him. It was a gentle young man, dressed in an ancient-style robe, looking at him with a gentle expression. It's raining. It's not good to get wet in the rain. The young man said gently. Oh, Bufong replied with a straight face. Then, the young man's eyes fell on Little Hu in Bufong's arms. This Little Hu is so cute. The nine-tailed fox is a rare species. I wonder if you'll sell it, sir? The young man said. He stretched out a finger and teased Little Hu. The little fox snorted and turned away from the clown bag. No, Bufong said. Little Hu's morale soared. He turned his head, opened his mouth, and bit the young man's finger. Slash. The young man's face froze. He hurriedly waved his hand and tried to pull it out. A bite mark appeared on his hand. This Little Hu is very naughty. I'm Yugo from Punglai. I want to buy this nine-tailed fox from you. A nine-tailed fox is a spiritual creature that doesn't appear in the world. Do you understand, brother? The young man said, rubbing his hand. Punglai? The immortal island of Punglai? Bufong raised his eyebrows. The legendary land of immortals? There have been legends of immortals in Huan Earth since ancient times. Do those immortals really exist? So, are you an immortal? Bufong asked, looking at Yugo. Yugo smiled enigmatically. Clearly, Bufong was frightened by the name of the place he mentioned. Of course, immortals exist, so are you going to give me the nine-tailed fox? Yugo chuckled. Shameless. Didn't you say you want to buy it? Why are you giving it to me? Bufong's face was expressionless. Yugo was speechless. In that case, I won't stand on ceremony, Yugo said lightly. He was a supreme chi cultivator. As a supreme chi cultivator, he had rushed here after learning about the nine-tailed fox. He had been nagging Bufong for a long time, and he was already impatient. He was different from those coquettish superhumans. He was a chi cultivator, and when he reached the highest level of cultivation, he would become a legendary immortal. Therefore, he had his pride. Freeze! Uge's pupils constricted. He stretched out a finger and pointed at Bufong. There seemed to be a strange fluctuation of spiritual energy in the air. Bufong stood motionless with Little Hu in his arms. Seriously, I was just talking to you nicely. You made me do it. With the recovery of spiritual energy, ordinary people are much tougher now. How dare you talk back to an immortal like me? Yuga shook his head. He was not the same kind of person as Bufang. He was destined to become an immortal. The nine-tailed fox was an immortal spirit beast. So how could it be defiled by a mortal? With his hands clasped behind his back and an oil paper umbrella, Yuga reached out and grabbed Little Hu in Bufang's arms. The freeze curse was a Penglai immortal spell. Even superhumans could not resist it. Looking at Bufang's motionless face, he smiled faintly. He stretched out a finger and pointed at Little Hu's nose. Suddenly, Little Hu, who had been motionless, opened his mouth and bit Yuji's finger, leaving another bite mark. Yuji's body stiffened. Ahem. I'm sorry, I was distracted just now. What did you say? Bufang craned his neck, turned to look at Yuga, and said indifferently. Chapter 1597. I'm sorry, I was distracted just now. Distracted my ass. Yuga felt that his worldview had been refreshed. The young man in front of him was not affected by his fixed curse. That was a Penglai immortal spell. Why was he not affected? Even an S-class superhuman would be controlled by it for at least 30 seconds. But the young man in front of him was not affected at all. The pain from Little Hu's bite on his finger did not seem so obvious anymore. Yuji's eyes widened as he stared at Bufang. His ethereal appearance seemed to have faded a lot. Little Hu loosened his bite, then turned his head and stuck out his tongue in disgust. Bufang rubbed Little Hu's head and looked indifferently at the man in front of him. A chi cultivator from Penglai? Bufang was really distracted and in a daze just now. When he returned to Earth this time, not only had spiritual energy recovered, but many strange things had also happened. These things made him a little suspicious and puzzled. The recovery of spiritual energy and the birth of superhumans were a little strange. But what about those chi cultivators? Chi cultivators were different from superhumans. In ancient times, chi cultivators should be related to the legendary immortals. There were many stories about immortals in Hua, including the Buddha of the West, the celestial court of immortals, and demons. Bufang wanted to find a sleeping artifact spirits of the god of cooking sets. He had an intuition that the sleeping place of the artifact spirits must have something to do with these immortals. Therefore, the look in his eyes when he looked at Yuga became even gentler. The rain was still pitter-patter. Holding the oil paper umbrella, Yuga took a few steps back. With every step he took, the water filled with spiritual energy splashed. The rain kept dripping down the edge of the umbrella, forming a hazy curtain of beads that blurred his vision. Who the hell are you? Yuga narrowed his eyes. The fixed curse did not work on Bufang, which made him a little confused. His original plan had been completely disrupted. No wonder he could tame the nine-tailed fox. This young man must have a big secret. Could he be a chi cultivator from another sect? Well, I have a question for you. Bufang thought for a while and asked. Yuga had already become very vigilant, so he did not dare to let Bufang get close. Bufang stepped forward. Yuji's eyes lit up. With a thought, he mumbled something and waved his hand in the direction of Bufang. Puchi! A white stripe shot out from his finger and smashed toward Bufang's body. Bufang did not dodge. Instead, he raised his hand and casually tore apart the white silk. Yuga, he was a chi cultivator. In the Esper world, he was equivalent to an S-class Esper. But in front of this young man, he felt like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. How many years had it been since he last felt this way? After cultivating in the Penglai Immortal Island for a long time, he thought he had made some progress in his cultivation. However, as soon as he came out, he ran into a tough opponent. Don't mess around. I'm just asking you a question. Bufang frowned slightly. This Yuji's method was much more brilliant than those Espers and Beastmasters. What shot out just now was an energy stripe. It contained rich spiritual energy, which could be compressed into a solid form and turned into an attack. Perhaps this was the so-called immortal method. Bufang took a step forward. He was still holding Little Hu in his arms. Yuga was like a frightened bird. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly retreated. He had already thrown the oil paper umbrella to the side. His long robe was still fluttering under the soaking of the rain. He pinched his fingers together, and a warm sword light suddenly appeared, lingering around his body and whistling. Peng Lai's sword finger. Yu Ji's eyes were very serious, as if he was facing the greatest enemy of his life. He had to bring a nine-tailed fox back, so a collision with Bufang was inevitable. Yuga despised this kind of existence who liked to pretend to be weak to eat the strong. Swoosh! A sword light pierced through the air and shot toward Bufang. Its speed was so fast that it almost surpassed the speed of sound. However, when it was 1 inch away from Bufang, Bufang caught it between his fingers. He exerted a little force, and the sword light broke with a cracking sound. A fine iron sword, broken into 2 pieces, fell to the ground. The atmosphere was a little stagnant at this moment. Yuga stared blankly at Bufang, his eyes wide. The Peng Lai sword finger was a real, immortal method, and yet it was broken so easily? This man must be a brilliant chi cultivator. Yuga was terrified. He slapped his waist with his hand. Immediately, a purple gourd flew out, hovering in midair and spinning. Then, with a thought, the mouth of the gourd opened, and countless streams of sword energy poured out of it. Thousands of streams of sword energy poured down and enveloped Bufang in an instant. The abnormality that had occurred here had already caused many people to be terrified. What did they see? That flying sword energy, was it a special effect? This was a fight between immortals. People rushed to the scene and frantically took out their phones to take pictures. Yuga had no time to care about that now. The sword energy kept falling, slashing the soil on the ground and sending it flying. It was a sword gourd, a magical treasure used to subdue demons and devils. He was forced to use it by Bufang. If he couldn't suppress Bufang today and bring the nine-tailed fox back, his reputation would be completely ruined. Looking at the countless streams of sword energy, Yu Ji's eyes shone brightly. He believed that Bufang would never be able to resist them. Suddenly, Yuga froze. He found that the rich sword energy was disappearing. It was as if it was swallowed by a whale. A silhouette appeared. In Bufang's arms, Little Hu opened her mouth wide and kept gasping. The last wisp of sword energy also went into her mouth. Burp! Little Hu burped, then contentedly found a place in Bufang's arms and lay down. The corner of Yu Ji's mouth twitched. How could the sword energy from the sword gourd be eaten? And what was going on with Bufang, who was unscathed? Bufang's face was indifferent. He had just wanted to ask a question, but now it seemed that he had to use force. The sword gourd, hovering in midair, spun. Bufang flicked his finger and flicked it in the air. The air exploded as if it had turned into a bullet and shot out. With a thud, it smashed into the sword gourd, which instantly broke into pieces. Damn it, Yuga was dumbfounded. He looked at Bufang, who was holding the fox and had a mantis shrimp on his shoulder. Without hesitation, he turned to flee. After running into a wall several times in a row, he had clearly recognized the gap between him and Bufang. This inconspicuous young man was a god. He wanted to flee and go back to the immortal island of Peng Lai. However, as soon as he turned around, a terrible pressure fell on him. Plop! He somersaulted and fell to the ground. The terrible will that filled the air. Is that A.F. King Divine Sense? Bufang walked up to Yuga. Facing this chi cultivator with a strong desire to live, Bufang chose to deal with him in a simple and violent way. Bam! Yu Ji's eyes were filled with horror. He opened his mouth to say something, but Bufang knocked him out. I'll ask him questions when he wakes up. The farce was over. The surrounding people's faces were flushed with excitement. Looking at Bufang's back as he left, they raised their phones, ready to upload the pictures to the internet. However, they were shocked to find that the pictures they had taken on their phones had become empty. Yuga woke up and felt something licking his face. When he opened his eyes, he saw a simple rented house. Where am I? What am I doing? What happened? After being asked 3 questions in a daze, Yuga finally remembered that he was now a prisoner of some people. Gurgle, gurgle. The air was filled with a strong fragrance. Yuga found that his stomach was growling when he smelled the smell. How was this possible? As a chi cultivator, he had long been accustomed to fasting. How many years had he been fasting? But now he felt hungry. But it smells so good. Yuji's face was full of hesitation. He turned his head and found that Little who was licking his face. The nine-tailed fox was a supreme-grade spirit beast, and his master had asked him to bring it back. Now, it seemed that he might fail. "You're awake." In the distance, Bufang glanced at Yugo, who had just woken up. With a shake of his hand, he flipped the dish out of the pot. The dish emitted a resplendent luster, overflowing with colorful lights, and a dense aura pervaded the air. It was cooked by Bufang with the ingredients in the system's storage space. Although his divine sense was suppressed and could not enter the farmland, he could still take out the things in the system's storage space. It was a simple bowl of dragon blood egg fried rice. A fragrant aroma filled the air, making people unable to control themselves. Bufang filled a small bowl and put it on the table. "Since you're awake, come and eat. When you're full, I have questions for you. Don't struggle. You can't even beat my mantis shrimp. You're too weak. Yugo, don't look down on me like that." He was a chi cultivator from the immortal island of Ponlai, and his strength was very strong. Even if he was not as strong as the immortals in ancient myths, he was not much weaker. However, under Bufang's gaze, Yugo got up. His legs were still a little weak. He crawled to the table and took a deep breath. The aroma filled the air. "It smells so good," gulp. Yugo swallowed. He looked at the simple egg-fried rice in the small bowl. The blood-colored rice and the golden eggs shone brilliantly, looking very beautiful. At some point, Little Who had rushed to the table and was enjoying the dragon blood egg fried rice. As for Xiaopi, he was lying on Bufang's shoulder and blowing bubbles. Yugo couldn't wait to grab a spoon and scoop up a spoonful of egg-fried rice. With a slurp, the egg-fried rice entered his mouth. The aroma that burst out in an instant and the delicious taste that made his tongue almost not made him sink in an instant. Slurp, slurp, there was only rice left in his eyes. He had never eaten such a delicious meal before. It was a feeling that moved him from the depths of his soul. One spoonful after another and another. Yuji's eyes narrowed. That small bowl only contains 3 spoonfuls of egg-fried rice. He did it on purpose, didn't he? He must have done it on purpose. He's so evil. Bufang ate unhurriedly, not paying much attention to Yuji's reaction and the resentful look in his eyes. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Yugo leaned back in his chair and looked at Bufang bitterly. "I didn't expect that one day Yugo, will be conquered by a bowl of egg-fried rice. But can you give me a few more spoonfuls?" Bufang glanced at Yugo. "Then answer my question." Yugo flipped his hair and looked at Bufang. "Ask away, for the sake of the egg-fried rice." The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. "What's going on with the recovery of Earth's spiritual energy?" Bufang said lightly. As soon as he said that, Yugo, who had been content, suddenly froze. Chapter 1598. Bufang's question was sharp. He directly asked about the cause of the revival of spiritual energy. Yugo did not expect Bufang to ask this question. What was the revival of spiritual energy? What else could the spirit chi revival be about? It was just the revival of spiritual energy and the awakening of the whole world. Yugo leaned back in his chair and glanced at Bufang. He found that there seemed to be a murderous look on the latter's expressionless face, which made his heart skip a beat. Has this strange young man discovered something? The revival of spiritual energy. Ahem, it's the revival of spiritual energy. I don't know where the spiritual energy comes from, but it has mutated the creatures on Earth, Yugo said with a hollow laugh. This explanation was also a rather general one. Bufang looked at him indifferently, which made his scalp go numb. Xiaopi's straight, compound eyes darted around, and its carapace was as sharp as a blade, exuding a chill that made Yuji's hair stand on end. Little Hu, on the other hand, bared her teeth at Yugo. The nine-tailed fox was cute to begin with, and when she bared her teeth, she looked even more adorable and pitiful. Don't beat around the bush. The revival of spiritual energy on Earth is not natural, but man-made. Anyone can see this as long as they're not blind. You don't have to hide anything anymore. Bufang said lightly. His words made Yugo feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. F***CK. Amazing. I can't believe he saw through me. How could this guy see through me? The revival of spiritual energy was something done by immortals, and ordinary people could not see through it at all. How could this young man tell him this secret? The revival of spiritual energy is the revival of spiritual energy. It's not as complicated as you think. It's just a carnival for all living beings on Earth, Yuga said with a smile. He wanted to calm himself down. But bam! Suddenly, Uge's pupils constricted. He found that his body was lifted up. The young man was still sitting calmly in his chair, looking at him emotionlessly. A furry object was tied around his neck. It was the fox's tail, and it was wrapped around his neck, lifting him up from his position. Little Hu lay on the table. One of his 9 tails grew longer and larger, wrapping around his neck. The originally harmless 9-tailed fox had transformed into a peerless, vicious beast in an instant. Speak. I'll give you 3 seconds. Bufang said lightly. It was not easy to find a chi cultivator. Bufang had to get some useful information from him. The spirit chi in the body of a chi cultivator was the same as the spirit chi in the spirit chi rain. There is no doubt that these so-called chi cultivators were responsible for the revival of spirit chi. Yuga struggled for a moment and patted Little Hu's tail. Then he fell on a chair and let out a long sigh. He could not help but feel a sense of sorrow in his heart. To think that he, a genius chi refinement warrior of Penglai, Immortal Island, was actually being tortured by a young man in the mortal world. It was a great sorrow. I say, logically speaking, with your strength, you shouldn't be unaware of this secret. Yuga cleared his throat and went on. He glanced at the expressionless Bufang. The revival of spirit chi is, in fact, a carnival organized by the chi cultivators of Hua and the chosen ones of the West. Yuga said. When he saw that Bufang was still unmoved, his expression became more and more strange. According to Bufang's strength, he was not weak on Earth. It was impossible that he did not know this secret. This was a major event of a global nature. It was fine if mortals did not know about it. How could a cultivator like Bufang not know about it? Was this Bufang an itinerant cultivator? Was he an old senior who had been in seclusion somewhere for many years? That was possible. With a 9-tailed fox and a strange golden mantis shrimp as a pet beast, he must be an old senior who had been in seclusion. He might even be an old senior from ancient Earth. At the thought of this, Uge's face became solemn. A carnival? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched, but he did not deny it. He motioned for Yuga to continue. Ahem. This carnival is not organized without a purpose. It's a preview of the real revival of spirit chi. Yuga said. His eyes narrowed slightly and seemed to become a little fanatical. The real revival of spirit chi? Bufang frowned. That's right. The current spirit chi revival is all an illusion. It is the result of high-level cultivators compressing spirit chi in the atmosphere and causing the spirit chi revival after the rain. This is fake. The real spirit chi revival comes from the inside of the earth. The scale will be bigger than this, and the effect will be more intense. Yuga said. As he spoke, he demonstrated it to Bufang. Do you know why? It's because our immortal predecessors have discovered that the spirit chi on Earth has actually been extracted and sealed in 4 major locations on Earth. Now, we have discovered those 4 locations. As long as we go deep into the secret realm and open the arrays or barriers that seal the spirit chi in the 4 locations, Earth will usher in the revival of spirit chi. The more Yuga spoke, the more excited he became. Bufang, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes. The first place Bufang thought of was the sleeping place of the artifact spirits. Uge's description of a place where spiritual energy was sealed was very similar to the place where the 4 artifact spirits slumbered. Were those 4 places? Bufang asked, frowning. Yugu, who had been talking with confidence, suddenly stiffened, and a little shyness appeared on his face. I don't know about those 4 places. I really don't know. I'm just a little chi cultivator. How could I know such secrets? Yugu said awkwardly. Chi cultivators are also divided into levels. When you cultivate to a high level, you can become an immortal. You should know about immortals, right? Don't think that those immortals in the myths are fake. They are real. Take the patriarch of the immortal island of Penglai, for example. He is a real immortal who can fly in the sky and burrow underground. He is omnipotent. In front of my patriarch, TSK, he can crush you with his little finger. Yuga said. Bufang glanced indifferently at Yuga. Who gave you the courage to say that? Immortals. They're existences that I've always dreamed of becoming. It's too difficult to become an immortal, especially in the era when Earth's spiritual energy is exhausted. If it were in ancient times, it would have been easier to become an immortal. Immortals are a general term. In fact, they are divided into Earth immortals, human immortals, and heaven immortals. Above heaven immortals are zenith heaven golden immortals and immortal kings. A yearning look came over Yuji's face. Huh? Yuji's words gave Bufang pause. There are so many levels of immortals. Why didn't I sense anything on Earth? It was impossible for the so-called immortals to remain silent. Also, who was suppressing his divine sense? Immortals certainly don't stay on Earth, although they originated from Earth. Unfortunately, Earth's spiritual energy is exhausted, making it unsuitable for immortals to cultivate. They all live in secret realms on Earth. According to my patriarch, those secret realms should be other planets in the universe. There are only a few immortals left on Earth now. Yuga said. After saying that, he stopped talking. His face was a little dark, for he had accidentally said too much. Perhaps he was subdued by the senior's temperament. Bufang thought for a while, then suddenly stood up. There was no need to think too much about other things. As for perfected golden immortals and immortal kings, Bufang was too lazy to think about them. All he wanted now was to find the sleeping artifact spirit. Suddenly, Yuga felt a weight on his shoulder, and he found that Bufang had put his hand on it. Senior, what are you doing? The corner of Yuji's mouth twitched. Was the senior going to silence him after he finished talking? Do you really not know where the 4 great spiritual energy seals are? Bufang looked at Yuga. The next moment, his divine sense surged, and a powerful pressure fell on him. Yuji's face darkened. Sure enough, this black-hearted senior is really going to silence me. No. I know a few clues. Yuji's face darkened. The killing intent was almost tangible, and it made his soul feel as if it had fallen into an ice cave. He dared not lie anymore. Speak. Bufang's words were concise and to the point. Ahem. Do you know about the World God of Cookery tournament that has been spreading like wildfire recently? Yugo asked after thinking for a moment. The God of Cookery tournament. Bufang paused. What did this have to do with the chef's tournament? Let me tell you, this tournament is actually led by cultivators. Behind it are Chi cultivators from Hua, God's chosen ones from the West, and believers of God from some small countries. Think about it. Why are there so many cultivators involved in a chef's tournament? Because the first spiritual energy ceiling point is related to chefs. Yuga said after thinking for a moment. Related to chefs? Bufang narrowed his eyes, and the corner of his mouth curved upward slightly. It seemed that his guess was right. The sleeping place of the artifact spirit was indeed the spiritual energy ceiling point. In the God of Cookery tournament, the top 3 chefs will be selected by those cultivators and brought to the spiritual energy ceiling point. Then they will know where the spiritual energy ceiling point is, Yuga said with a smile. He was intoxicated by his own wit. Very well. Arrange a chef's tournament for me. Bufang said. A chef's tournament? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. His cooking skills would crush everything. There was no suspense. Yuga felt a headache coming on. This is not a senior. This is an ancestor. If you want to participate in the tournament, you should sign up. I'm a Chi cultivator, not a chef. But when he turned his head, Little Who's 9 tails were wagging, and the golden mantis shrimp was staring at him with gleaming eyes. The corner of Yuji's mouth twitched. Senior, the chef's tournament has begun. But if you want to sign up, there's another way, and that is to find someone from the state's supernatural agency, Fong narrowed his eyes. The state's supernatural agency, in the suburbs of Jiangdong. In a secret base. Chief Luo slumped into a chair, exhausted. His mind was in a mess. The nine-tailed fox had been taken away. Judging from the strength of that young man, he should be a chi cultivator and not an ordinary one. He could freeze bullets. Could he be an earth chi cultivator? Chi cultivators were divided into heaven, earth, profound, and yellow. An earth chi cultivator was equivalent to an S-class superhuman. As for the heaven chi cultivators, they were comparable to earth immortals. Chi cultivators of that level were also walking around the earth. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Chief Luo was very tired. In front of him were a number of computers. Each computer was flashing with text, as well as some photos and information. Xiao AI, wearing glasses, walked in from outside with red eyes. Chief Luo, I found it. Information about that guy, said Xiao AI. When she mentioned that guy, she almost gnashed her teeth. How dare he knock me out? Chief Luo straightened up and looked at the computers. Beep, 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 photos and text appeared one after another. The photos were of Fong, and the text was of Fong. An apprentice chef? The corner of Chief Luo's mouth twitched. Was this information serious? How could an almighty expert comparable to a heaven chi cultivator be an apprentice chef? Xiao AI, are you sure the information is correct? Chief Luo asked as he looked at the information. Suddenly, he found that Xiao AI, who was behind him, did not answer him, which puzzled him. All of a sudden, a fair, slender hand rested on his shoulder. Looking at the slender palm, Chief Luo's eyes narrowed. He turned his head and saw Fong's expressionless face. As for Xiao AI, she was held down by a young man in a traditional Chinese costume with a smile on his face. Xiao AI's movements seemed to be frozen in place. What are you doing? This is the state's supernatural bureau. Don't do anything stupid, Chief Luo said quickly. Fong glanced unhurriedly at the information about him on the computer screen. The information was correct, but unfortunately, it was all from his past. Don't be afraid. I'm here to ask you to do something for me. Fong pulled over a leather chair, sat down, and looked indifferently at Chief Luo. Do you know about the World God of Cookery tournament? Fong asked, looking at Chief Luo. I need a place in the tournament. You should be able to do that, right? Chief Luo froze. What did he mean? He glanced at the chef marked in the information, then at Fong, who had asked him to help him get a place in the tournament. Was this awesome chi cultivator really a King chef? Chapter 1599. The World God of Cookery tournament was held on a huge cruise ship. The Jewel was the name of the ship. It weighed nearly 100,000 tons, and it looked like a behemoth anchored at the edge of the largest port in Hua. The ship was crowded with people. In front of the boarding ladder of the cruise ship, there were staff in exquisite suits checking boarding passes. The cruise ship, Jewel, was very famous in the world. Because the World God of Cookery tournament was so important, the cruise ship was activated. Of course, it was also because the tournament had a profound background. The people on a cruise ship were bustling. In addition to the teams of participating chefs, there were also some business tycoons and influential people boarding the cruise ship. Some of them came for sightseeing, while others came to taste delicious food. The World God of Cookery tournament had long become the focus of the world, and it had caused quite a stir recently. It was a competition that gathered the world's famous chefs. Moreover, the champion would get a prize of 100 million yuan and a mysterious gift. That was why the tournament had attracted all the famous chefs in the world, making it the grandest cooking competition in the world. On the boarding ladder of the cruise ship, there were people of all skin colors: black skin, white skin, and yellow skin. Contestants from various countries boarded the cruise ship. There were chefs from the West, Hua, and many other small countries. They were not only participating for the ranking, but also for the high prize money. Sir, please wait. Please show me your boarding pass. An Asian man in a suit and leather shoes, wearing headphones and a black metal pistol at his waist, stopped a few people in strange clothes in front of him. There was a young man in a traditional Chinese costume, a young man with a fox and mantis shrimp, and a girl holding a notebook. The lineup was so strange that the security guard had to pay attention to them. Xiao Ai was speechless. Why was she sent to this cruise ship with Bufong and that strange man? What kind of cooking competition was this? She was a woman who wanted to become a top superhuman. How could she waste her time in this cooking competition? However, she did not dare to disobey Chief Luo's order. So, she had to bring Bufong and that strange young man here. Xiao Ai, who was wearing a pair of suspenders, took out 3 identification passes from her belly pocket. He handed the certificate to the security guard. The security guard took it suspiciously, glanced at Bufong, Yugo, and Xiao Ai, and finally nodded. Please board the cruise, but sir, your pet is not allowed to be brought on board. The security personnel looked at little Huan Bufong's shoulder and frowned. Why? Bufong asked expressionlessly. Your fox pet, we're not sure if it's vaccinated, infectious diseases, etc. So please leave it with us for the time being. The security guard said, Then how did that dog get in? Bufong raised his finger and pointed at the golden retriever in the arms of a lady wearing a mink coat in the distance. That's a pet dog. The security personnel were speechless. This is a pet fox, Bufong said. Little Who stuck out his tongue and acted cute. Xiao Ai rolled her eyes. Pet my ass. That's a ferocious spirit beast. A 9-tailed fox. It's equivalent to an S-class, highly dangerous spirit beast. The security guard was a little confused. Yugo was already impatient. Senior is really easy to talk to. He can even talk to these mortals for a long time. He raised his hand and shouted, Freeze! In an instant, the security guard was frozen in place. Yugo raised his head and took the lead to step onto the cruise ship. A group of people followed him. In Yuji's view, cultivators like them could do whatever they wanted. Heavens! This cruise ship. Xiao Ai boarded the ship, turned on her laptop, and suddenly exclaimed. The computer made a beeping sound. She looked at it and found that the screen was densely packed with spiritual energy points. There were so many superhumans and cultivators on this cruise ship. On the contrary, the 2 people next to her, Bufong and the strange young man, did not have any spiritual energy points. Isn't there a cooking competition on this cruise ship? Why are there so many superhumans taking part? Xiao Ai's exclamation seemed to attract the attention of many people. In the distance, a beautiful woman in a bright red dress glanced over with a glass of wine in her hand. She pursed her red lips slightly. Many people also noticed Xiao Ai. She was a member of Hua's state supernatural agency. This identity was destined to make her the focus of many people. However, Xiao Ai's strength did not attract many people's attention. She was just a C-class superhuman, a weakling. Only the 2 men next to her paid attention to her. She could not sense any spiritual energy points, so she did not attract too much attention. Xiao Ai covered her mouth. She knew that she seemed to have attracted the attention of many superhumans, some from the West, some from Sakura, and some other countries. Here, she needed to be careful with everything she said and did. Heavens! Is this really a cooking competition? Why are there so many superhumans? Xiao Ai asked Bufong and Yugo in a low voice. No wonder the state supernatural agency had a quota. With so many superhumans on the cruise ship, the agency must have a quota. Didn't your chief tell you? Yugo gave the somewhat adorable girl a strange look. Xiao Ai paused. TSK. Poor girl. Yugo clicked his tongue, looking like he deserved a beating. After that, he stopped talking. A group of people walked on the cruise ship. The cruise ship was very big, weighing nearly 100,000 tons. It was simply a behemoth on the sea. Toot, toot. The ship started, clanging, and the whistle pierced the sky. Then, the huge ship slowly left the port and rushed into the vast sea. The interior of the ship was more than 20 stories high. Bufong and the other 2 walked in the ship and came to the waiting area. The God of Cookery competition had attracted many world-class chefs. Of course, in addition to them, there were also some ordinary chefs. These chefs were naturally attracted by the high prize money. However, These ordinary chefs had to go through countless cooking competitions before they could board this ship. Every chef's face was full of confidence and fighting spirit. They wanted to win the first place and become the champion. Of course, compared to the ranking, the prize money of 100 million was more attractive. Not to mention the mysterious gift. Not only chefs participated in the competition, but also teams of chefs. In fact, few chefs participated in the competition alone. Most chefs came in teams. The teams of chefs cooperated well, and they cooked in an orderly manner. Bu Fong and the other two were sitting in a corner. The waiting floor was beautifully decorated, worthy of being a world-class luxury cruise ship. Neon lights flashed, and melodious songs lingered in the air. On the waiting floor, many people in suits and gowns were dancing. There were also all kinds of wine and food on the table. Hugo was so excited that he went around to eat and drink. Xiao Ai, on the other hand, sat at Bu Fong's side and stared at him. The task Chief Luo gave her was to keep an eye on Bu Fong. However, Bu Fong did not do anything. He just sat lazily in a chair and quietly waited for the competition. The melodious singing had nothing to do with him. Bu Fong spread his divine sense and scanned the whole floor. In fact, among so many chefs, there were not many superhumans and chi cultivators. Even if there were, they were not chefs. The chefs were ordinary people, but there were superhumans in the team. It seemed that this world god of cookery tournament was not that simple. Beautiful lady, can I have a dance with you? Just as Xiao Ai was fiddling with the computer, a gentle voice rang out. A handsome man with blonde hair and blue eyes, dressed in a well-ironed suit, came to Xiao Ai. He held out a hand gracefully, looked at her with a smile, and asked in fluent Mandarin. Xiao Ai was stunned. She blushed when she saw the handsome young man's face. So handsome. Go ahead, Bu Fong said lazily. The golden-haired, blue-eyed youth nodded at Bu Fong and smiled. Bu Fong closed his eyes, his face expressionless. Xiao Ai blushed and was pulled away by the young man, with a confused look on her face. Bu Fong was much quieter now. Suddenly, the sound of high heels rang out, and the alluring smell of perfume filled the air. A woman in a bright red dress swayed her waist as she came. The dress had a slit at the thigh, revealing her long white legs. It was very charming. Her breasts rose and fell, stunning people's eyes. Handsome, can I have a dance with you? The woman came to Bu Fong and asked softly. Her Mandarin was a little bad, but she spoke with confidence. However, after she finished speaking, Bu Fong was still sitting there motionless. The woman's face froze slightly. The woman glanced at little Hu Li and Mantis Shrimp, who were lying on the young man's shoulder, and a strange look flashed in her eyes. Her red lips curled up slightly, and she continued to speak. Bu Fong opened his eyes. What did you say? Bu Fong asked with a straight face. Can I have a dance with you? The woman's eyes seemed to flash with pink light, and she kept blinking. Her bad Mandarin exuded a sense of charm. This young man was with the man from the Special Abilities Bureau of Hua. As an ability user from Sakura, this woman naturally had to come to gather some information. Sakura had received information about the world god of cookery tournament. They had to let their chef win the championship, so she naturally had to be fully prepared. She was very confident in her charm ability. This man would definitely listen to her obediently and spill everything out. What's wrong with your eyes? Is there sand in them? Why do you keep blinking? Bu Fong asked. The woman was speechless. How is it possible? How could this man not be affected by her charm? Sir, the woman still wanted to say something. Suddenly, she found that Bu Fong's eyes had become very deep. She felt as if she was facing a chaotic starry sky, and her whole body sank into it. Her cheeks suddenly turned red, and she couldn't help but clamp her legs together. She vaguely found that her mouth was saying something, but she couldn't remember what she said. When she came to her senses, she was already far away, and that young man had already disappeared. The woman was dumbfounded. What just happened? What did she say? Why did she feel so tired and powerless? Sakura, how dare a small country covet an artifact spirit? The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly. With him here, Even an immortal king would not be able to touch any artifact spirit. In the distance, the host had begun to announce the start of the God of Cookery tournament. Yuga came back with a satisfied look on his face, holding a cake. As for Xiao Ai, she came back with a red face and a drunken look. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. This world God of Cookery tournament should be very interesting. It had been a long time since he had encountered the delicacies of Earth. He suddenly had a lot of interest in this tournament. On the 20th floor of the luxury cruise ship, the whole floor was filled with stoves and cooking desserts. The neat rows of stoves were quite a visual impact. One by one, chefs dressed in neat chef robes and their chef teams stepped onto the stoves meticulously, standing in their respective positions. These chefs came from all over the world. There were Hua chefs, Western chefs, and of course, some chefs for small countries. However, their distinguishing feature was obvious. They were all dressed in neat chef robes. Bu Fang stood in front of his stove. He looked down at the denim jacket he was wearing, which was something he had found in his rented room. As for Xiao Ai, she was wearing denim suspenders, and Yu Gu was wearing a flowing traditional Chinese costume. Their combination, in the midst of a large group of neat and clean chefs, was indeed a little weird. Around them, indifferent and disdainful gazes fell on them. Why did any Tom, Dick, or Harry come to participate in the World God of Cookery tournament? Money was really tempting. The 100 million reward had attracted all kinds of people. A crisp sound rang out. The World God of Cookery tournament had begun. Chapter 1600. Are these people really chefs? The chefs in neat chef's robes looked at Bu Fang's group with suspicious and disdainful eyes. For such a formal occasion, all of them were solemn, showing their best side. How could they be like that group of people who were dressed so nondescript? Do you think you're relying on your pants? One is wearing a traditional Chinese costume, one is wearing a denim jacket, and the other is wearing suspenders. Are you guys here to be funny? Many chefs snorted disdainfully at this. Chefs' robes were the symbol of their identity. In such a formal competition, they had to wear them properly. At least, they had to give people the impression that they were reliable chefs, which would deepen their impression. The host was a handsome Western man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He should be a mixed race, as his face was especially handsome. In this era, mixed-race people were very popular. Even in China, a mixed-race person from the north and the south would be very popular. The host held the microphone, speaking with fervor and assurance. He spoke fluent Mandarin. After he finished, a beautiful female host repeated it in standard English. She made sure that everyone could understand the rules of the competition. However, after talking for a long time, the host's main purpose was to introduce the judges. There were two kinds of judges. First, there were 5 main judges, and then there were 300 public judges. However, these public judges were not the public. They were business tycoons from various countries or people of high status. Together, they formed this panel of judges, which made the lineup very strong. The 5 main judges were not ordinary people either. They were people with a high reputation in the gourmet circle. There were 2 women and 3 men. One of the men was a monk. Of the 2 women, the first one was a chubby woman wearing luxurious gold and silver jewelry and thick lipstick. She looked very rich. However, this woman was a world-class food connoisseur and a famous poisonous snake judge. According to records, this fat woman had scolded more than 2 chefs to tears. The second woman was extremely beautiful, especially her white breasts. She had golden hair, but she had a soft Asian face. Her overall appearance was perfect and harmonious. It was a masterpiece of God. This woman was also a food critic. She had been invited as a judge for every major food competition. Her words were sharp, and her comments on delicacies hit the nail on the head. Her status was very noble. The remaining 3 men were also famous big shots in the food industry. It was especially so for that monk. Even though he was a monk, he was a famous gourmet in China. His vegetarian dishes and vegetarian meals were fought over by many high officials. However, even though he was a monk, he did not care about meat and vegetables. He loved wine the most in his life. He was known as the wine and meat master. Bufong glanced at the judges indifferently. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. Among the 5 judges, 3 of them weren't mortals. Interesting. Among the public judges, there were also many people who were suppressing dense spiritual qi. Yugo was heartless. As a qi cultivator, he did not care what others thought of him. As for Xiao Ai, her face was still red. She was immersed in the temptation of the handsome blonde guy just now. All right, the judges have finished their introductions. The World God of Cookery Tournament has invited the world's most famous judges. There is no doubt that this will be a cruel competition, a strict competition, and a competition that will go down in history. The prize money is 100 million. 100 million. If God can give me another chance to start all over again, I'm willing to give up my hosting career and become a chef. The host's witty words caused the atmosphere to be rather lively. Now, the theme of the first round of the World God of Cookery Tournament is noodles. Noodles are a common topic all over the world. I hope the chefs from all over the world can present us with top-notch noodles. Cooking time is 1 hour. The ingredients are ready. Chefs, please wave your kitchen knives and scoop up your long ladles. Let's get started. The host shouted at the top of his lungs. The atmosphere of the audience was boiling. Boom, boom, boom. The host's words fell. On the row of stoves, the smell of fire could be heard. Of course, there were more sounds of the chefs fiddling with the ingredients. Noodles? Senior, what kind of noodles are you going to make? Yugo was very confident in Bufong's cooking. He had tasted Bufong's dragon blood rice and egg fried rice. 3 spoonfuls of it had captured his heart. His firm and unwavering heart of fasting was broken. Xiao Ai didn't trust Bufong very much. After all, from Bufong's information, she knew that Bufong was just an apprentice chef. An apprentice chef participating in a world competition. Are you King kidding me? Which chef here isn't a world-class chef? Which chef here doesn't cook in a 5-star hotel? You're just an apprentice chef. What ability do you have to compete with so many chefs here? Do you think you're making a movie? How can an ordinary chef compete with countless chefs and win the championship of a food competition? Wake up, young man. Xiao Ai didn't have much confidence in Bufong. She admitted that Bufong was very strong, but being strong and having great cooking skills were 2 completely different things. Even if he was an immortal, he could still cook dark cuisine. That was undeniable. So she didn't have any hope in Bufong at all. She felt that Bufong must have some purpose in participating in this competition. What she needed to do was to find out Bufong's purpose and inform Chief Luo. Noodles? So the theme is noodles? Bufong narrowed his eyes. He had opened a restaurant in the alternate world for so many years, but he didn't make many noodle delicacies. Back then, there was a rampage ramen that was very popular. However, Bufong didn't plan to make rampage ramen now. He pulled open the cabinet under the stove, which was filled with a lot of ingredients. Bufong glanced at them one by one. There was fine flour, fresh noodles, and, of course, a large bag of instant noodles. Oh, instant noodles? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Why did instant noodles exist? Bufong remembered that he had made instant noodles in the Xiai Divine Dynasty. That bowl of instant noodles was known as the Soul Demon's nemesis. There are instant noodles here. You're the host's son, aren't you? Is this specially prepared for you? Xiao Ai, who had also discovered the instant noodles, was surprised. Instant noodles are a blessing for people who don't know how to cook. I can't believe it actually appears in such a world competition. It's truly a competition. The host is really thoughtful. However, Xiao Ai didn't think that Bufong would take out the instant noodles. The host is just putting on a show. I can't really take out the instant noodles, can I? If that's the case, I might as well give up. Suddenly, Xiao Ai's eyes widened. That was because she realized that Bufong had really taken out the instant noodles from the cupboard. He even grabbed an egg. Ew, are you really going to make instant noodles? Xiao Ai looked at Bufong as if he was a fool. No wonder you are an apprentice chef. If you make a bowl of instant noodles in the competition, aren't you just waiting to lose? Bufong glanced at her and didn't say anything. Yugo, on the other hand, was very sensible because Bufong had captured his heart. Swish! Bufong tore open the wrapper of the instant noodles and took out the flatbread from within. In the distance, many people heard the sound of Bu Fong tearing the bag. They turned to look at him, looking at him as if he was a fool. Where did this retard come from? How could he make instant noodles in the world god of cookery tournament? Do I need you to make instant noodles? Many judges were speechless. How could something like instant noodles be put on the table? The host also noticed Bu Fong. After all, it was difficult for a chef to take out a bag of instant noodles without attracting attention. I didn't expect that some chefs in this competition are really naughty. I can't believe they actually used instant noodles to compete. What kind of delicacy can instant noodles be made? Let's wait and see. The host had given him a lot of face. Many judges snorted. When the instant noodles were brought to them, if they took a bite, they would broadcast themselves eating *T. The group of judges sneered. The 5 judges, on the other hand, ignored Bu Fong. Instant noodles with their status. How could they possibly eat instant noodles? Xiao Ai's eyes widened as she looked at Bu Fong. She wanted to see if there was anything special about Bu Fong. Since he dared to use instant noodles to cook, he must have something up his sleeves. Did he have some secret weapon? But she was soon disappointed. Secret weapon? Soak it in boiling water? The corner of Xiao Ai's mouth twitched. Could it be that I've been fasting for so long that I've lost the ability to judge food? That the egg fried rice I made was just a simple egg fried rice? Otherwise, why would Bu Fong's instant noodles be cooked in the proper way? Piece by piece, the bread fell into the pot and spread. Then, he sprinkled seasoning and scooped them up. His movements were smooth and fluid. He was simply a veteran of instant noodles. The chefs around him were trying their best to show off their cooking skills. Their pasta dishes also had their own characteristics. For example, Huan knife-shaved noodles, gravy noodles, mixed sauce noodles, ramen, and so on. Western pasta, handmade noodles, and so on. There were all kinds of noodles, dazzling the eyes. Steam gushed out and the boiling broth surged, causing everyone's mind to be immersed in the fragrance that pervaded the air. The entire 20th floor of the cruise ship was filled with the aroma. Bu Fong's movements were methodical as he scooped the noodles out of the wok. He scooped out the instant noodles from the pot and put them into small bowls. In total, he made more than a dozen bowls. As for the fried eggs, Bu Fong only fried 5 eggs. The chefs around him had also finished cooking. They brought the noodles to the judges one after another. These noodles were the results of their team's research. Although it was just a bowl of noodles, there were many stakes in it. After all, they had many competitors. This bowl of noodles had to consider the strength of their opponents, the presentation of their trump cards, and so on. Bowls of noodles were served. The host was talking eloquently. The 5 judges and the 300 public judges began to taste the delicious food. Phew! Bu Fong's instant noodles done. Bu Fong simply placed the last noodle in the blue and white porcelain bowl, ended his cooking, and exhaled gently. How can you be so slow when making instant noodles? You better not go up there and make a fool of yourself. Really, I advise you as an experienced person. Xiao Ai looked at Bu Fong and said. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly. You and you go, sir the noodles. Bu Fong said. Xiao Ai was speechless. It's one thing for you to make a fool of yourself, but you also want to drag me into this. Can't you see that the handsome guy with blonde hair and blue eyes is watching me? As soon as I come up on the stage, my reputation will be ruined. However, Xiao Ai had no choice but to follow behind Bu Fong, carrying the noodles with Yugo. The noodles were covered by the fried eggs, so they couldn't see what was underneath. With the noodles, Bu Fong walked to the judges' table. As Bu Fong stepped onto the stage, the judges' table and the 300 public judges suddenly sneered. Ouch! I'm dying of laughter. He really dares to bring instant noodles up. I admire this contestant's courage. Instant noodles. If this thing can make me advance, I'll eat white rice with garlic for a month forever. The public judges laughed. Bu Fong's expression did not change. Xiao Ai's face was almost buried in her chest. Oh, she had no chest. The 5 judges looked coldly at Bu Fong. They naturally would not be kind to a contestant who dared to bring instant noodles in front of them. They did not even need to taste it. They were directly eliminated. If they took a bite, they would not need to be food judges for the rest of their lives. Chapter 1601. This year's World God of Cookery competition was very popular, attracting the attention of the whole world. As people's living standards improved, more and more people paid attention to food. This kind of international food competition naturally aroused the interest of countless people, not to mention that the prize money this time was as high as 100 million. Everyone's eyes were focused on the arena. All kinds of cameras were taking pictures. Xiao AI followed behind Bufang, her legs shaking. She was just an otaku who played with computer data, and she had never seen such a big scene. For a moment, her heart was thumping wildly. Yuga, on the other hand, was very curious. Bufang finished cooking quickly. After all, it was just instant noodles, not some difficult food. The judges watched as Bufang walked over. They had tasted many dishes before, and Bufang's face was pale. However, they had also shown their sharpness as judges. Some dishes were eliminated with just a flip of their chopsticks, without even tasting them. Their pickiness gave countless contestants headaches. The judges from the general jury were not as picky, but the main judges were the 5 main judges. The main judges also accounted for the majority of the scores. With so many contestants, it would take a lot of time to taste each dish. However, although it took a long time to cook, the tasting time was very short. That was because the judges were too picky. Their pickiness of the dishes was almost abnormal. For example, if they saw a few strands of noodles of different thickness, they would eliminate them without giving the chef a chance to explain. Sometimes, the judges would just take a glance at the chef and eliminate him. They would analyze the length of the chef's fingernails, the length of his beard, the whiteness of his face, and so on. They were so harsh that it almost made people click their tongues. Some chefs who were eliminated immediately burst into tears. It was too miserable. It was too cruel, especially that unbelievably beautiful woman, whose mouth was vicious to the extreme. Dozens of chefs left the arena, and they had only tasted about 1/3 of the dishes that were served. The remaining 2/3 were eliminated by them, based on their appearance. Xiao AI trembled even more when she saw this. In such a cruel competition, Bufang's bowl of instant noodles would be kicked off the stage before he could even serve it. How dare he serve instant noodles to the judges' table? It was not just Xiao AI. In fact, no one was optimistic about Bufang, of course. It wasn't that they didn't think highly of Bufang. What they didn't think highly of was instant noodles. 5 judges, 5 bowls of instant noodles. The 5 judges all had different attitudes. The first fat woman was rubbing her fingers and trimming her nails. As for his gaze, it never fell on the instant noodles. As for the second beautiful woman, she was taking a nap with her eyes closed. Her chest was heaving up and down like a surging wave. The monk from China smiled, but his gaze seemed to be empty. Each of the judges was more picky than the last. Instant noodles? The male judge in the chef robe glanced at Bufang. He was speaking in Mandarin that was not very standard. In our country of Sakura, instant noodles are also known as ramen. That said, it's hardly elegant. You're a Cathayan chef, and yet you're brave enough to serve instant noodles on the competition table. In Cathayan terms, your courage is commendable, said the man. However, there was a hint of mockery in his tone. The judges around him snorted coldly. The fat woman and the beautiful woman didn't even look at him. What was the common enemy of women? Instant noodles. How many pimples would you get with one bite? They were here to be the judges of the World God of Cookery tournament, not to beat Dowdu up. Instant noodles. No, this is not instant noodles. Bufang shook his head, clasped his hands behind his back, and said lightly, "This bowl of noodles, if I really have to give a name, then I'll call it psychological noodles." Psychological noodles? Xiao AI and the chef looked at each other. The audience members who were watching the competition were also stunned. Keep fooling. Keep fooling. It's just a bowl of instant noodles. What else can you do? The audience didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Jiangdong City. In a plain restaurant. Lumu's eyes widened as he stared at the image on the old TV. An expressionless face from the TV came into view. Bufong? Why did this kid go to the World God of Cookery tournament? Lu Mu was startled. The head chef walked out of the kitchen. After what had happened, the two of them had recovered, but they still had lingering fears. The World God of Cookery tournament? The head chef was a little dazed. He didn't even dare to say that he was qualified to go to this competition. However, when he thought of Bufong's delicious sour and spicy shredded potatoes, the head chef felt that Bufong might really have a chance. But Bufong's dish this time is a bowl of instant noodles. Who can't make instant noodles? I can do it too. I could do it too. Lu Mu curled his lips. Instant noodles? The head chef narrowed his eyes. Based on his understanding of Bufong, this was definitely not an ordinary bowl of instant noodles. Take it away. You're eliminated. The fat woman finished trimming her fingernails, and the fat on her face trembled. She smiled and said, she directly sentenced Bufong to death. Instant noodles? She wouldn't taste it even if she was beaten to death. She was as beautiful as a flower. How could she eat junk food like instant noodles? The surrounding judges also nodded. You haven't eaten yet. Xiao AI muttered behind Bufong. Although she didn't think that Bufong's instant noodles could advance, it was a little unfair for the judges to directly eliminate Bufong without tasting it. Don't eat it. You can tell what kind of junk food like instant noodles is with your eyes. The fat woman continued to shake her head. Take it away. The beautiful woman also said they didn't have a good attitude toward instant noodles. In the distance, the waiters in white shirts and black vests standing behind the judges stepped forward, trying to remove the instant noodles on the table. Bufong's expression didn't change all the time. However, when those waiters were about to remove the dishes, he said lightly, you don't want to eat? Well, then you can remove the egg. Bufong said, huh? Remove the egg? Bufong's instant noodles were made in a very special way. In fact, on the surface, the entire mouth of the bowl was covered by a round fried egg. The fried egg was yellow and white, which was appetizing at first glance. The fat woman seemed to be a little impatient. She grabbed a stainless steel fork and tore the fried egg apart. Once the egg was removed in an instant, the surrounding people were all stunned. Airpang seemed to have heard a violent explosion. That instantaneous shockwave made them feel a little absent-minded. Beams of light shot out from under the uncovered egg. Then, there was the aroma that was so strong that it could melt people's hearts. The 5 judges were stunned at the same time. This aroma caught their hearts in an instant. Unlike the previous instant noodles, the aroma of this noodles was different. Gulp. The fat woman grabbed the fork, staring blankly at the instant noodles. Her red lips pursed, swallowing a mouthful of saliva. I won't eat it even if you beat me to death. I won't eat it even if you beat me to death. Won't eat it. Eat it, the fat woman's mind echoed with her solemn vow just now. Slurp, slurp. Oh, it's so king fragrant. The fat woman held the blue and white porcelain bowl, uncovered the egg, and took a spoonful of golden glazed noodles, stuffing it into her mouth. Her mouth pouted, and she sucked deeply. The end of the noodles swayed, splashing the thick soup. Boom. A mouthful of noodles entered her mouth. The fat woman's eyes widened to the widest in history. Even the fat around her eyes couldn't restrict her eyes. This taste, the fat woman was deeply intoxicated. She felt that at this moment, she was walking on the beach, her body wrapped in a thin veil. The men around her looked at her with burning eyes. The waves came crashing down, slapping against her bare feet. The fat woman's face turned red, and she grunted. In the next moment, she, who was running on the beach, seemed to bend down, her hand stroking from her bare feet up, forming an S-shaped curve. At that moment, the fat on her body was shaking. At that moment, her heart burst out. At that moment, she felt that she was the fattest. Slurp. The last mouthful of noodles entered her mouth, and she didn't know when the egg was finished. Even the soup in the blue and white porcelain bowl had been emptied. The fat woman was deeply intoxicated. The people around her were stunned. The beautiful woman sitting next to her opened her mouth into a circle. Where's your integrity? How can you be so intoxicated with a bowl of instant noodles? Of course, They recognized the fat woman's posture. As world-class food critics, they could conclude that the fat woman was definitely captivated by the food. Attacking the heart. Was it really attacking the heart? The beautiful woman didn't believe it. She also tore off the egg and used a fork to stab the noodles. Slurp. She ate elegantly. After all, she had to maintain the posture of a beautiful woman. After all, this was a live broadcast of the world. Suddenly, the eyes of the beautiful woman, who was holding the fork with one hand and tucking her hair behind her ear with the other, suddenly lit up. The next moment, this woman seemed to have gone crazy. The second fork fell. Rolling and rolling up a large forkful of noodles, she stuffed it directly into her mouth at eating manner. She was probably the reincarnation of a hungry ghost. Umipa. Interesting noodles. The monk narrowed his eyes and began to eat the noodles. However, the moment he started to eat, he directly rolled up his kasaya and took big mouthfuls of noodles. The Sakura chef who had mocked Bufong earlier had long buried his head in the bowl. He suddenly raised his head, and his face was intoxicating red. Crazy. This is King crazy. This judge is crazy. He ate the noodles as if he was eating something else. Could it be any more exaggerated? This is noodles, not medicine. Looking at the 5 judges who were still intoxicated, everyone was dumbfounded. Didn't they say that they wouldn't eat a mouthful of noodles? Didn't they say that they would have integrity? Didn't they say that the judges would eat *T while eating noodles? Gulp. The air was filled with a rich aroma. The smell was alluring, intoxicating, and intoxicating. Ding, ding, ding. Without a doubt, Bufong was directly approved by 5 votes. The 5 judges gave their results at the same time. The fat woman narrowed her eyes, savoring the taste. I never thought I would eat instant noodles so crazily. The springy noodles in my mouth felt as if there was a small hand massaging my entire body, making me feel as if I had turned into a fluttering swallow. That's the taste of first love. That's a harbor in the depths of my heart. Swallow your sister. The people around couldn't help but curse. Don't you know how fat you are? Not to mention a swallow. Even the wings of an eagle can't carry you. Big sister. The beautiful woman's expression was complicated. The texture of the noodles is just right. The chef took the time to talk to the judges into consideration. The qualitative change of the noodles under the egg. It's unbelievable. Noodles that attack the heart can indeed be called noodles that attack the heart. This is not an ordinary instant noodles. Soup base, noodles, egg. Everything fused together too perfectly. Impeccable. Xiao AI was a little confused. Have these judges never eaten instant noodles before? Can instant noodles be promoted? Is this child's play? The audience watching the live broadcast was also in an uproar. Is this a joke? A packet of instant noodles. He just added a poached egg, and he conquered the judges of the World God of Cookery competition. A competition with a prize of 100 million yuan is like this. Am I eating instant noodles with a prize of 100 million yuan while watching the live broadcast? The audience was in an uproar. They thought it was funny. However, they couldn't change the judge's decision. He had advanced to the next level. Under the jealous gazes of many chefs, he stepped into the promotion seat. He became the first chef to advance. At this moment, the public judges were also immersed in the delicious taste of Bufong's instant noodles. They couldn't extricate themselves. The entire 20th floor of the cruise ship was filled with the smell of instant noodles. The aroma of the noodles cooked by the other chefs was suppressed. At this moment, outside the cruise ship, the color of the sky had changed at some point. Dark clouds covered the sky, and there seemed to be lightning bolts constantly flashing. Chapter 16:02. Rumble. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, covering the entire sky in an instant as if the end of the world was coming. Huge waves were formed on the surface of the sea, and the waves were turbulent and unstable. The whole cruise ship bobbed up and down under the impact of the waves, looking quite dangerous. This scene frightened the sailors and the captain of the cruise ship. People who went to sea were most afraid of this kind of stormy weather. But before they went to sea today, they had checked the weather. It should be sunny. How could there be a storm? Moreover, the oppressive storm made it hard for them to breathe. Inside the cruise ship, the feeling was not so obvious. The competition was still going on. Because they had eaten Bu Fong's instant noodles, the 5 judges became more and more picky. The next chefs seemed to have experienced a nightmare. Their dishes were disliked by all kinds of people. Some of them were criticized as being worthless. Some dishes were removed as soon as they were served. One by one, the chefs were eliminated. The competition, which was already cruel, became even crueler. The audience watching the live broadcast was also dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally felt the cruelty of the competition. The dishes that, in their eyes, made them drool were removed by the judges in disgust. Was this really a food competition? Was this not an instant candy competition? Which dishes were not good to order? Once they were ordered, they would disappear. Many chefs were indignant. They did not believe that their dishes would be eliminated by a bowl of instant noodles, but the cruelty of the judges was beyond their imagination. In the end, after a long time, only Bu Fong's bowl of instant noodles was promoted to the next round. However, as time went by, perhaps the influence of the instant noodles was fading. The judges' evaluation process gradually became more lenient. More and more contestants were promoted to the next round, and they wept with joy. Rumble. The sky was thundering. The sailors and crew of the cruise ship were scared out of their wits. They could only pray that the storm was not too terrible. On the 20th floor of the cruise ship, Bu Fong and Yu Ge were sitting together. Bu Fong was taking a nap with his eyes closed. He did not take this kind of competition seriously. After all, Bu Fong was not in the same realm as the chefs on Earth. What a depressing atmosphere. Yu Ge's expression suddenly changed. He walked to the window of the cruise ship and looked out. His expression immediately changed. Which almighty being is going through the tribulation? Yu Ge's pupils constricted in disbelief. When the Qi refinement warriors on Earth cultivated to a profound level, they would have to go through the tribulation. As a Qi refinement warrior, Yu Ge was naturally aware of this. In this situation where there was only thunder and no rain, it was very likely that some mighty figure was about to undergo a tribulation. The lightning tribulation shrouded the top of the cruise ship. Could it be that this mighty being was on the cruise? Yu Ge was shocked. Just who in the world was it that he didn't know even though he was on the cruise ship? Could it be an earth deity? Ugh! Lightning tribulation. Suddenly, an indifferent voice rang out in Yu Ge's ears. Yu Ge, who was watching the lightning tribulation outside, couldn't help but tremble. F***CK. Senior, you almost scare me to death. Yu Ge patted his chest and rolled his eyes. He's a Qi refinement warrior after all. How could he be scared to death so easily? Bu Fong glanced indifferently at Yu Ge. I'm analyzing the cause of the lightning tribulation, aren't I? At such a sensitive time, an almighty expert is going through the tribulation. Isn't this a sign of something? What do you want to tell us? Yu Ge analyzed seriously. Analyzing the lightning tribulation? The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched, and he glanced at Yu Ge. This guy? Come with me. Bu Fong glanced at Yu Ge, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked toward the top floor of the cruise ship. In the distance, Xiao Ai saw Bu Fong and Yu Ge talking furtively. She pushed up the glasses on the bridge of her nose and followed them stealthily. Yu Ge was a little confused, but he followed Bu Fong. The 3 of them walked out of the cabin of the cruise ship and came to the observation board on the top floor. At this moment, there was no one on the observation board. The crew and sailors were all in the cabin, trying their best to control the cruise ship. The waves kept crashing against the iron plates of the cruise ship. Clattering sounds of collision could be heard. The cruise ship swayed up and down, and the curve was obvious. Xiao Ai held the handrail of the ship, her face pale. Although she was a C-class superhuman, the shaking of this magnitude made her a little seasick. In the distance, Bu Fong and Yu Ge stood in front of the ship with their hands clasped behind their back. Their calm appearance made Xiao Ai admire them. Being in close contact with the lightning tribulation made Yu Ge feel more and more depressed. The feeling of the lightning tribulation was too clear. It was as if a sharp knife was hanging over his head. Once it fell, blood would splatter everywhere. Yugo even felt a little breathless. Senior, this is a lightning tribulation. An almighty expert is going through the tribulation on the cruise ship. Yugo said solemnly. Yes. Bufang nodded in response to Yugo. Let's go back first. Once the lightning tribulation falls, the impact will be too wide, and it will easily cause casualties. It will be a disaster for cultivators like us. Yuji's face was pale, and he was a little frightened. Only when a heaven-grade Chi cultivator transcended the tribulation could he become an immortal. After reaching the immortal realm, every major realm had to undergo a tribulation. Judging from the momentum of the lightning tribulation, it was probably not an ordinary one. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang stared at the thunderclouds in the sky with a deep look in his eyes. I just used a little trick, used some cooking skills, and made a bowl of instant noodles, and I've been targeted. Is it going to warn me directly this time? Bufang murmured. Yugo paused. He had not seemed to have heard him clearly. What did you say? Yugo widened his eyes. Bufang glanced at him and did not say anything. Rumble. Dark clouds rolled in the sky. Then, a rumbling sound exploded out as if to tear the sky apart. Suddenly, lightning flashed in the sky. A bolt of lightning suddenly crashed down from the sky. Its target was none other than Bufang. Yugo was scared out of his wits. Damn it, this lightning tribulation wants to kill me? Bam, bam, bam. As the lightning tore through the air, the sound of explosions rang out constantly, making one's heart beat faster. Yuji's legs were weak, and his body was stiff. In the distance, Xiao Ai, who was holding the handrail, was even paler. She was struck by lightning as soon as she appeared. Bam! The lightning fell. The resplendent lightning caused everyone's eyes to be filled with a dazzling light. They were dazzled, and they felt as if thousands of white lights were bursting in front of them. Yuji's body slumped to the ground. Although he was an earth chi cultivator, in front of the power of heaven and earth, he was no different from an ant. In the face of the power of nature, all men were insignificant. Chi cultivators had to conform to nature, cultivate with it, and finally stand above it. They had to jump out of the shackles of heaven and earth and not belong to the five elements. This was what a mortal was like. I'm going to die. This was the thought that came to Yuji's mind. Suddenly, Bufang, standing beside him, slowly raised his hand. Then, he made a grabbing motion at the void. The lightning fell and was caught by Bufang with one hand. The crackling lightning struck the top of the ship. Xiao Ai froze. Yugo froze. He caught the lightning with his bare hands? Is he still a F** king human? He's courting death. Bam! There was an explosion. Blinded by the dazzling light in front of them, they couldn't help but close their eyes. Finally, they slowly opened their eyes. Bufang stood where he was, motionless. Bufang's palm was as warm as jade, without the slightest sign of being scorched. It was as if the lightning had not caused him any harm. How is this possible? That's a lightning bolt. How could he be unscathed after it fell? Senior, he's really a senior. Yuji's mouth fell open, and he looked dumbfounded. Bufang clapped his hands and frowned. This lightning tribulation is a bit lousy. Bufang pursed his lips. Xiao Ai and Yugo were already beyond shocked. On the ship, many crew members ran out one after another. When they saw the lightning fall on the ship, they were scared out of their wits. Did they not look at the almanac when they went out today? Not long after they set sail, they were struck by lightning. But as soon as they came out, they were dumbfounded. The top floor of the ship was unscathed, and there was no sign that it had been struck by lightning. What? What about the lightning tribulation? Yugo came up to Bufang and asked in horror. I crushed it. Bufang put his hands behind his back and stepped into the cabin. The cooking competition was still going on, and Bufang was not in a hurry. Crushed it? Yugo was dumbfounded. You crushed the lightning tribulation with your bare hands? Who do you think you are? Thunder God. Xiao Ai was so scared that she could not speak. Yugo had thought that the lightning tribulation was transcended by some almighty expert in the cabin, but it turned out that it was Bufong who was next to him. Senior, are you transcending the tribulation? Are you a legendary immortal? Yuga stammered. The more he asked, the more excited he became. Me? No, I don't transcend tribulation. Bufong shook his head. It's instant noodles, Bufong said. He transcended the tribulation with instant noodles? Yuga paused, and the next moment, the expression on his face became very funny. Did Bufong mean that he just transcended the tribulation with instant noodles? Instant noodles transcended the lightning tribulation? But when he saw Bufong's expressionless face, he could not laugh anymore. Could it be true? That lightning tribulation just now was instant noodles? What do you think? Such a weak lightning tribulation is not even enough to scratch an itch. Bufong calmly said as he raised his head to look at the sky. Yuga felt stifled. As an earth-level chi cultivator, he had not transcended the lightning tribulation yet. Could it be that he, an earth-level chi cultivator, could not even compare to a bowl of instant noodles? Xiao Ai flinched. She was so scared that her heart was in a mess. Chief Luo, the outside world is so scary. I want to go home. Back in the cabin, the competition was still going on. After waiting for a while, under the evaluation of the 5 strict judges, the contestant teams that advanced to the next round were gradually selected. There were about 20 contestant teams, which was not a small scale. Among the 20 teams, only 5 could make it to the finals and go to the final competition venue for the cooking competition. Bufong knew that the final competition venue should be the spiritual energy ceiling point. The competition was still going on. The cruise ship sailed on the vast sea, and wherever it passed, the waves would be turned over. The cruise ship was very luxurious. The chef teams that did not advance could also enjoy the ultimate sailing vacation brought by the cruise ship. The organizer behind the cruise ship was very generous. Bufong returned to his room. This was the room that the organizer specially prepared for him after he advanced to the next round. Every contestant team that advanced to the next round had such a room. The room was very luxurious and spacious. It was equipped with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a beautiful view of the sea. It was one of the most luxurious rooms on the whole cruise ship. Yugo and Xiao Ai were also in the room. It was late at night. The bright moon rose over the sea, and the sparkling water reflected the moonlight. Xiao Ai changed into a bathrobe. The bathrobe stretched open, revealing 2 straight and beautiful legs. She curled up on the sofa and put her legs on the coffee table. There was a computer on her lap, and her hands were nimbly typing on the keyboard. Here, this is the information about the remaining 19 teams that advanced to the next round that you wanted. Xiao Ai turned the computer around and handed it to Yugo, who was still wearing an ancient-style robe. These 19 teams are not ordinary. 8 of them are from Hua, and each of them has a superpower. They can't hide their spiritual energy from me, Xiao Ai said, taking a sip of the iced juice. In the distance, Bufong was resting with his eyes closed. Yugo and Xiao Ai were discussing something. In fact, they also found something different. The teams that advanced to the next round of the cooking competition all had superpowers? That was a little interesting. In the distance, the bright moon hung high in the sky, and the sea was rippling. The sea view outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was particularly charming. Suddenly, in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, one shadow after another slowly descended. Xiao Ai and Yuge, who were talking and laughing, were suddenly stunned. They turned their heads and looked out of the window. The black shadows suddenly raised the weapons in their hands. Black muzzles were aimed at them. Bang, bang, bang. The next moment, sparks flew, and the floor-to-ceiling windows shattered. Chapter 16:03. Clang. A loud explosion rang out. The floor-to-ceiling window, which had been polished until it was almost transparent, burst open. Dense cracks covered the surface of the sword. It suddenly burst open. The sound of gunfire seemed to tear the sky apart. Bang, bang, bang. The black shadows in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows raised the submachine guns in their hands and fired at them with tongues of fire. This scene was out of everyone's expectations. Xiao AI was startled and instantly screamed. She, who was wearing a bathrobe, rolled over and hid behind the sofa. Bang! 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 The cotton wool on the sofa flew everywhere. Hugo was also slightly surprised. He tapped the ground with his toes and floated away. All of the bullets missed their target. What's going on? Why are people shooting on the cruise ship? Why are there assassins? Xiao AI screamed. Although she was a C-class superhuman, she was still very fragile in the face of bullets. She felt a chill run down her spine when she remembered that she had just walked in front of the gates of hell. The shadows in black, wearing bulletproof vests and helmets, holding submachine guns in their hands, untied the straps on their bodies and rushed into the room in an instant. Their goal was simple. Without a doubt, they wanted to kill everyone in the room. Bang! 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 The assassins rushed into the room and immediately locked onto their target. Their target was Bu Fong, who was sitting quietly with his eyes closed. Xiao AI and Yuge hid in the corner. The assassins did not care about them. Their guns were aimed at Bu Fong. Without the slightest mercy, they pulled the trigger. Bang! Bang! The sound of gunfire became very clear and sharp in the room. The bullets spun and cut through the air, producing a series of sonic booms. Xiao AI's face was pale. Who were these people? Why did they want to kill Bu Fong? Their target was so clear. Was it Bu Fong? The bullets were so fast that they spun and cut through the air. They were aimed at Bu Fong's forehead, eyes, and other vital points. These people were well-trained assassins, and they were particular about killing with one blow. Bu Fong opened his eyes. His eyes were deep. In his eyes, the speed of the bullets seemed to have become very slow. Bu Fong slowly raised his hand. He pointed his finger in front of him. It was like a stone thrown into a calm pond. Instantly, a series of ripples spread out. Time, which had slowed down, suddenly returned to normal. As for the bullets, they were shot back in the opposite direction. Poochie! Poochie! The assassins wearing bulletproof vests never expected this scene. The bulletproof vests on their bodies exploded, and blood splattered everywhere. He fell to the ground. The whistling bullets pierced through their bodies. Damn it! Someone let out a low growl. Who would have thought that a chef could be so difficult to deal with? A killer's shoulder was bleeding, but he still raised his gun, aiming at Bu Fong, aiming at Bu Fong's head. He wanted to pull the trigger and kill Bu Fong. However, Bu Fong looked at him indifferently. Under the horrified gaze of the killer, the barrel of his submachine gun slowly twisted. It was twisted to the extreme and aimed at his own head. Pong! The trigger was pulled. The assassin fell to the ground. Dead. They were all dead. Xiao AI, who was hiding behind the sofa, was in a daze. She was just a little otaku. She had never seen such a bloody scene before. You could not take it seriously. Bu Fong can even crush a lightning tribulation, let alone a mortal. Hee. Unless a mortal used a missile or a nuclear bomb to blow up Bu Fong, he would never be able to kill Bu Fong. Even a heaven-grade chi cultivator could not be killed by ordinary firearms, let alone a freak like Bu Fong, who could crush a lightning tribulation with his bare hands. This senior was probably the legendary Earth Immortal. Oh, it's really strange to be able to advance by eating instant noodles. You must have put something in the noodles, haven't you? A faint chuckle resounded. The originally empty air suddenly became stagnant. 3 figures emerged. They were 3 figures wrapped tightly in bandages. The leader was wearing red bandages, while the 2 behind him were wearing black bandages. Ninjas from Sakura Island. Yuga frowned. Xiao AI's pupils constricted. It was the people from Sakura Island who wanted to kill them. Why? Xiao AI couldn't believe it. She didn't understand why these people want to kill them. Was it for the cooking competition? But it was just a F***king cooking competition. Mr. Tanajiro said, he has reserved a place in the top 5 of this competition, so you can die in peace. The ninja wrapped in red bandages sneered. After that, without waiting for Bu Fong's response, The ninja waved behind him. Xiao AI was furious. The people from Sakura Island were so shameless that they dared to kill people for a cooking competition. There was no doubt that these ninjas were superhumans, and they were not ordinary superhumans. The red ninja was probably at the level of an A-class superhuman. A clanging sound rang out. Two black ninjas pulled out the katanas on their backs. With a flash, they dashed out in an instant. In a flash, they disappeared from where they were, and when they reappeared, they were in front of Bufang. The two katanas suddenly slashed toward Bufang's neck. The red ninja was confident. Bufang didn't have any spiritual energy. He might have some tricks, but how could he compare to the red ninja? The red ninja was determined to win. Even if Bufang hid his strength, he was not afraid. Could it be that a chef was an S-class superhuman? Bufang sighed. These annoying flies. The next moment, the two black ninjas who were waving their katanas stopped in midair. Bufang stood up unhurriedly, reached out his hand, and gently squeezed the katanas. There was a cracking sound. The two katanas were broken. These katanas contained a little spiritual energy which could be channeled. However, in Bufang's hands, they were as fragile as biscuits. He raised both hands at the same time and gently patted the faces of the two black ninjas. Bam! The next moment, a loud noise rang out. The bodies of the two black ninjas flew out. He fell down beside the red ninja's body. The red ninja's face changed instantly. Yamashima Tajiro. He's one of the 20 teams in this year's God of Cookery competition. Xiao AI, who was wearing a bathrobe and holding a laptop, found the information and said, Sakura Island? Bufang stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked at a steady pace. You mean that little island in the corner that looks like a bug? Bufang said lightly. You're courting death. The red ninja's eyes narrowed. He felt a little pressured. He didn't expect the task to be so difficult. The chef's strength seemed to be somewhat beyond his expectation. However, he had to fulfill Mr. Tajiro's request. This chef had to die. He had convinced the judges with a bowl of instant noodles. This chef was Mr. Tajiro's rival for the first place in the God of Cookery competition. Buzz, the red ninja's hands quickly made a hand seal. Then, he swung his hand toward Bufang. His figure suddenly split into more than a dozen. Doppelganger technique. All of a sudden, the red ninja froze. With a smack, the red ninja felt as if he was about to be slapped away. The chef's slap landed right on his face. There were so many doppelgangers, but why did it happen to hit his real body? The red ninja opened his mouth to speak. However, Bufang still slapped him. The red ninja staggered backward from the force of the slap. Bufang raised one hand and slapped the red ninja again and again. The red ninja's face turned red and swollen from the slaps. The doppelgangers had already dispersed. From Bufang's body, he felt an incomparably terrible pressure. Bufang raised his hand and pointed a finger at the red ninja's forehead. Puff! The bandage fell off. A wretched-looking middle-aged man was revealed. The middle-aged man let out a panic scream. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. Then, he pointed his finger at the wall. Bam! The middle-aged man was directly smashed into the wall by an unparalleled force. Which floor is the goose-something wolf on? I think I should pay him a visit, Bufang said calmly, asking the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man widened his eyes, swearing not to say a word. He had the basic rules of a ninja. The basic rules of a ninja? What was that? Was it edible? Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. He raised his index finger and pointed at the wretched-looking man's chest. A moment later, the wretched-looking man poured out all the words he knew. Boom! After he finished speaking, the middle-aged man screamed miserably. A tremendous force burst out. The whole wall exploded. The middle-aged man turned into a shooting star and shot out, disappearing in an instant. He flew out of the ship and smashed into the sea. Xiao AI's heart skipped a beat. She knew that Bufang was powerful, but she didn't expect Bufang to be this powerful. That was an A-rank Esper ninja. Let's go. Let's pay that wolf a visit. Bufang said faintly. Bufang was just worrying that the competition was going too slowly and boring, and the Goo-something wolf came to give him a chance. Before the cruise's security personnel arrived, Bu Fong left first. Yu Gu, on the other hand, was in high spirits. He followed behind Bu Fong, eager to see the world in chaos. On the 15th floor of the cruise ship, in the deluxe suite, room 1513, a middle-aged man was sitting on a sofa in a bathrobe. On both sides of the sofa were two women who had just come out of the shower. Their skin was still wet, and they were giving the middle-aged man a massage. The middle-aged man was Yamashima Tanajiro, sent by the largest conglomerate in Sakura Island. He was not a professional chef, although he had been trained. However, he did not care. With the support of the conglomerate, he only needed to throw money at it. It would be easy for him to get into the top 5 of the competition. Money was not a problem at all. His goal was not the 100 million prize money. His goal was to get into the top 5. Only with a place in the top 5 would he have a chance to enter that place. Tanajiro swirled the wine in his glass, and the wine in the glass swirled. He enjoyed the massage from the two beauties, and his eyes fell on the women. Their enchanting and hot bodies made Tanajiro feel a surge of lust. However, he was not in a hurry. When the news came back, he would have a good celebration with the two women. After this night, there should be only 10 teams left out of the original 20. Apart from the tough ones, he could not deal with them. The rest of the weaklings would be eliminated first. When the competition came, he would take his time. Anyway, the conglomerate had prepared good things for him. When the time came, he would put them in the dishes. Even the god of cooking could not stop him from getting a place. Yamashima Tanajiro finished the wine in his glass in one gulp. He stretched out his hands and rubbed the bodies of the two beauties who were giving him a massage. He then smiled wretchedly. Suddenly, thud, thud, thud. Someone knocked on the door. Yamashima Tanajiro froze, then narrowed his eyes. I'm back. It should be all done. Even in the entire Sakura Island, it was a big deal for 10 red ninjas. Yamashima Tanajiro stood up, rubbed his hands, and impatiently walked to the door. He opened the door. He froze, because standing at the door was not the red ninjas of the conglomerate. Instead, it was an expressionless young man in a denim jacket. Yamashima Tanajiro revealed a puzzled look. Suddenly, a wave of pressure suddenly appeared. The tail of a little who lying on the young man's shoulder suddenly enlarged and wrapped around his neck. Yamashima Tanajiro's face suddenly turned red. When the two women in the room saw this scene, they did not scream. Instead, they looked at each other, their eyes flashing with a sharp light. He took out a silver ball and threw it on the ground, which exploded with a bang. White fog filled the air. In the white fog, 2 sharp daggers stabbed toward Bu Fong. Boom! However, a huge force exploded. The two women were directly hit by the force and flew backward, slamming hard against the wall. They coughed up blood. Yamashima Tanajiro's face was instantly filled with fear. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bu Fong slowly stepped into the room. Sitting on the soft sofa, Little Who's tail grew bigger and longer, wrapped around Yamashima Tanajiro, and hovered in front of Bu Fong. Bu Fong crossed his legs and watched indifferently. Yugo was smart enough to lock the door from the inside. Tanajiro's whole face was red, and he was shouting in Sakura Island. All right, don't hide. Come out, Bu Fong said lightly. As soon as he finished speaking, on the wall of the room, where there was originally nothing, a silhouette slowly appeared. The figure was none other than the judge from Sakura Island, one of the 5 main judges. The judge looked at Bu Fong with a sneer. I didn't expect that even the red ninjas would fail. But there's an old saying in Hua. There's a road to heaven, but you don't take it, and there's no door to hell. Are you here to court death? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.